Public Research with Daniel Schwartz.
Episode 2, with photojournalist Zach D. Roberts, on Georgia, voter suppression and the state of U.S. politics.
Could you give me sort of your story of how you got into this realm of work?
I started back in 2006. I've always been a photographer, just like since I was 9. I had a camera, taking photos of of random things. But I started an internship with an investigative journalist named Greg Palast back in 2006. I still work for him as a freelancer now. But basically, the reason I wanted to work for him is that he had written a book called The Best Democracy Money Can Buy, and he covered corporate crime for The Guardian. But then in the year 2000, he started covering election theft. And voter suppression. We can't call it. We can't say still an election anymore because a certain crowd has kind of taken those words. Unfortunately, the election integrity crowd has. But by the way, when you hear election integrity, it's that's voter conspiracy or BS. Yep. Started working for him because I was really interested in covering voter suppression and uncovering it, and that's kind of from there I started covering the right wing, because the kind of the origins of modern vote suppression come from the kind of anti-immigrant, the anti-immigrant far right. And people like Chris Kobach, who's currently the attorney general in Kansas. And from there, got interested in covering the farther right. Back then, that was just CPAC. That was like CPAC, the NRA, like that was the quote unquote farther right, at least far right. Now it's the center. Now it is the Republican Party whole hawk. But the party has moved to where the far right used to be. And I started covering that, then went to what was supposed to be just a small kind of like, not a lot of people thought, I don't think a lot of people thought was going to happen. Went to Charlottesville in August of 2017 to cover the Unite the Right rally. Got a couple of photos that got some people thrown in jail, thankfully, who attacked a young African-American man who's a school teacher. And from there, it's been kind of just what I cover now is switching back and forth between voter suppression and the extreme. Now I have to say, I guess the right, covering the right now.
So where are you from originally?
I'm from upstate New York, small town north of Syracuse.
Now, Greg Palast. I'm sorry.
Palast.
How do you say it? Palast?
Palast. Yeah. Yes. Like it's Palast, but it sounds like an EST.
Yeah, I've known him for years. He's got the sort of Burt Sugar, that old boxing writer, the great fedora.
Yeah.
Very memorable.
He's worn that fedora. This is a bit that I was like, he can never get rid of it, because he also kind of looks a little bit like Larry David.
It's smart.
Yeah, no, he can never get rid of it, but he's actually always, he says this himself, but like he genuinely always has worn that fedora. Like I have, I've worked for him for so many years. Like I've seen photos of him back in the day. He had the hat when he was working for the state government, doing investigations, that sort of thing.
But you also do like other freelance work, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, the main core of my work has been with Greg Palast, but I also write for the Progressive magazine, Truth Out, and I still cover basically those two things. I cover activism has been kind of the core of my photojournalism coverage, where basically I cover protests, whether they, become violent because of the cops. I hate when they say protest turned violent. It's like protest usually doesn't turn violent. It's the cops started. So but kind of covering that world, stuff where you have to wear gas masks and helmets, and that's kind of the other bit of thing. I do some environmental coverage of environmental issues for Desmog Blog, excellent environmental news site. If you don't know about it, highly recommend it. And but yeah, that's kind of the main core. Yep.
You know, as long as I've been following you, it seems like wherever there's some far right assholes, well, not all everywhere, obviously, but when there's like far right
I had
assholes,
the budget.
you show up to document what's going down. Is that generally what you try to do?
Oh yeah, no, I mean if I'm working on some grants right now, so if you know anybody who's trying to give money away, but if I would be at every single thing if I possibly could. I definitely would have. I cover mostly stuff on the East Coast just because I have a car that I drive. I put about 30,000 miles on it a year, and so yeah, I mean, I would be pretty much at every single rally and protest if I possibly could. But I cover what I can financially because I have basically I do work and then I spend the money on doing more journalism, and that's basically the entire thing.
So I'm really glad that you've sort of been in the game since 2006, because then we can really discuss a lot of the trends that are sort of, you know, they've manifested right now. But let's just go through like some like events, and I'll just like ask you if you were there. First of all, how many CPACs would you say you've covered?
I think I'm at 5 now. Because they're doing multiple a year now. So like just this year I covered 2 of them. And then I covered 3 or 4 beforehand. They kind of blend together before, like, 'cause I've covered them basically since Trump started arriving. And I just that alone, I think I've written about this before for Nation of Change, but basically just over the past, I would say, 7 years? Oh my God, it's been 7 years now that he's been going to them. They have become more. It used to be just kind of a libertarian geek fest with like kind of, okay, what's your everybody like the little they used to have like little side conferences that was like super geeky. Like I remember going to a meeting, no journalists were in there, it was just me, and cover it and filming a bunch of people who would end up becoming the basically environmental council for Donald Trump, talking about how CO2 is good for us and we should have more of it, because remember, you see all these drawings of how big plants used to be when dinosaurs roamed the earth. And it's just like literally that was their like entire logic.
Only problem is we don't have enough CO2.
Oh no, I mean they genuinely I mean my favorite one was, well, we don't need the Clean Air Act anymore because our air is clean now. And it was just like, well, how do you think it got there, guys? What's the... But like, and so it was a very good, useful tool to learn how the right organizes. And so all of these people that used to be in these tiny little conference rooms with like 30 people in a room, like if it was packed, it would be 30 people. And I would film them and then talk to them, afterwards. And they were very open about everything. And, this was like the hardcore activist meeting time that they'd have, not the big, you might have Donald Trump, you'd have, the big names talk on stage, and then just be kind of general whatever. But even the speeches up on the general stage, the last one I covered was genuinely scary. Like I've been to, I think, over 20 Trump rallies. I've been to a dozen other like kind of related rallies of, Trump within the MAGA world. I've covered Nazi rallies. I've covered, most everything. But seeing, a couple thousand people in a conference room in a hotel in what was it? God, was
Orlando?
It Dallas? There was one in Orlando, and then the one I covered in Texas was with the Hungarian president or prime minister. Orban. Orban. Yeah. That was genuinely terrifying. Not just Orban's speech, which was a straight white nationalist, like fever dream. But it was all of everybody else. It was just like, let's see how we can make not just jokes at expense of like trans people and their story, but like how mean how mean can we be to these people?
They're not even human. They're just a laugh line.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's beyond. I mean, this is always the scary thing is when you start seeing people not just use dehumanizing, but like not recognizing that these people are human, which is like what can you can kill people, you can kill things that aren't human. And that's, I mean, that's where we are. That's obviously where we are right now after, having several mass shootings but
so 5 CPACs. All right. So I'm just gonna run. I just want to do a overview. So let's just go through the elections. 2012. Did you cover that?
Oh yeah, I've 2012. I think I actually was I covered it. I was in Alaska at that moment.
Oh, okay.
I was working we were trying to develop a TV show with a friend of mine.
Yeah.
2012. No, but I mean, like, Alaskan elections are their own wild, different story. And like Alaska, if you ever get an opportunity, I think it's probably changed now, but back even just 5 years ago, if you go to Alaska and you go to Anchorage, and election night, they have an election night. Every single person who's running for statewide office, or even like Senate or whatever, like statewide off, like lower level office,
state Senate,
state Senate, whatever. Yeah, they all come into one room. There's there's like 5 different media operations that all have like microphones and everything set up, and they do kind of rounds around. So you'll literally be standing next to Lisa Murkowski, and then look over to your right and Don Young's there. And then the Democratic candidates who usually end up sadly losing. I'm not a Democrat, but like the difference between Don Young and Mary Pertola. I mean, I'm sorry. She's a good person. Don Young was a dick. But it's completely wild seeing like how many interviews I was able to interview Lisa Murkowski. I was able to interview Don Young. I was able to all these people, and I'm I've never met Chuck. I've met Chuck Schumer because he was at my graduation, and that's it. I shook his hand and walked by him. Other than that, I've literally never seen.
He goes to every county. Legendary. So what about 16? Were you on the trail on 16?
Yeah, I think we were. I think was that the first year we were in? Oh yeah, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, that was Donald Trump's year. Yeah, no, I spent the last 3 weeks of the election driving up and down the East Coast covering Trump and Clinton rallies, and going to Bernie events, because Bernie was campaigning like a son of a bitch for Hillary Clinton, something that Clinton people refused to recognize, that he campaigned more than Barack Obama did. He campaigned more than Hillary Clinton did, actually. But
we're gonna get into all.
No, but I covered all of it. Yeah, I covered all of that, and then in 2018 I was in Georgia. In 2020 I was in Georgia. In 2022 I was in Georgia.
Okay. So is there like, what are your annual events like? So I know you don't go to every CPAC necessarily, but is it like CPAC? Are there a few others that?
I mean, CPAC has become there's other ones that I'd like to go to, but either for financial reasons, but more than likely, I just can't get in. Like in a week, or maybe right now, actually, I think it's this weekend, is Turning Point USA events. I think are very, if you're covering the far right, I think are very, very significant to go cover.
How many have you covered at TP USA?
I've only covered one TP USA, and since then I have been denied press credentials, or usually just ignored. And that is because they are, unlike CPAC. CPAC, I think, whether or not they actually like check your social media and like kind of go through like, who are you and what are you doing here? I think that they actually really revel in the attention that they might get. Like, but the TP USA really likes to control their message more than anybody else, and kind of letting only friendly. I mean, you go to any of these conferences, and I would say probably 80-90% of the media is friendly, is not just friendly, but is just, propaganda networks for whatever they're doing. I mean, that's like the NRA too. I mean, it was always shocking because it wasn't that, they're pretty easy to get into as long as you have like a national outlet that you work for. I work for a wire service, a photo wire service, and that's usually how I get into everything. And I do work for them. I genuinely, I make like 20% of my income by doing that. So it's like, it's not like a bit or anything like that. But it's definitely how I get in the door. If I say, hey, can I go to this right-wing conference and I'm working for the progressive, they're not going to let me in. You know, I'm working for whatever, you know, it's just not going to happen. But the fact that the fact that you go to these things, and I think that one of the reasons I think it's really important to cover these things is you notice the fact that, like I said before, 80% of the media that's there is propaganda networks. It's you have Fox News as center now, and then everyone else is to the right. And the fact that they actually, like, Fox News and CNN now at this point are basically like the same when in consideration of people that go to like CPAC and things like that, on the like how far right, you know, like, oh, they're the liberals. But it's fascinating to know that unlike the left, like you go to like something like Netroots Nation and there's like a couple blogs, you know, I mean, there's like nothing really big. There's obviously there's Daily Kos, there's a handful of like American Independent, there's a handful of small sites, but it is nothing in the reach and intensity and following that the far right has when it comes to media. And like it's sad because like the New York Times won't even be bothered to cover is basically New York Times is like the liberal, you know, is like kind of the liberal institution, or at least people would argue that it is. I think it's a right-wing news publication, but they won't even be deemed to cover Netroots Nation, other than maybe they'll send a photographer or they'll do the dens in disarray. You know,
yeah, I mean, we should get into that. I think it's because they're actually, if you look at Netroots Nation versus CPAC, it's two different genres. I mean, the CPAC is just entertainment. It's essentially entertainment.
It is because I would argue though that it's become that.
No,
like you're saying before, like it used to genuinely be a thing that people would organize, and you'd have more tabling, you'd have more like real events, and like trying to get, you know, like have younger people come in that are interns, and it was I mean, it always was a right wing clusterfuck, but it became. But now it's become like genuinely like this is where everybody comes together. Anybody who's like basically not Nick Fuentes, who has, you know, usually has his own counter thing. Which, by the way, I tried to go to one of those, and shockingly, I was turned away and threatened with arrest.
Okay, so you were at Charlottesville?
Yes, I was at the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. Yeah.
Okay, and you were at January 6th.
I was actually in Georgia for January 6th. I was covering the runoff election, and I bet my boss, Greg Palast, he was just like, nothing's gonna happen, and he's just like, I bet you $100, and I'm like, I will take that bet. I know something's gonna, I know shit's gonna hit the wall. I did not think that level of literally shit's going to hit the wall.
But you have footage of Fuente, the Groypers, right?
Oh, yeah, no, there was the lead up rallies that happened. The million.
Okay, so you were there for that. Okay.
Yeah, I was there for the first one that happened like a week or two after the election, and that was seriously an intense. That was, to me, anybody who has covered that rally and then said, "Oh, nothing's going to happen on January 6th," was just lying to themselves, because you saw the intensity, you saw how angry people were, and it only got worse and worse and worse up until January 6th. And I mean, I don't think it's gotten better since then, but that was the release valve that kind of happened a little bit, where they're like, oh crap, people are going to jail now.
So what else have been sort of, I'm sure I'm missing a bunch. There are sort of like events that you happen to have covered that I might have missed, would you say?
I mean, there's always these small, I mean, the scariest things that I would say, I mean, there's the massive, the big Proud Boy rallies that happen, that, you know, happened in Oregon, that I went to.
Okay.
I went to one of those. I didn't cover a lot in Oregon. It's just, I try to stay focused on the East Coast.
Was it the Patriot Prayer, that big clash where they marched over the bridge?
I wasn't there for. I have many colleagues that were. I did cover my one thing with Patriot Prayer was a hilarious, sad little day in Albany, New York, when Joey showed up to the Albany Capitol and tried to have a rally that was I think it was an anti-abortion rally, and
no one showed.
It was nobody showed up. It was me and one other like independent media person showed up, and that was it for media.
Was it on
What's that?
Empire State, was it at Empire State Plaza, the giant Rockefeller thing?
Oh no, it was in Albany, New York. So it was
Yeah, no,
oh,
that's
sorry, yeah,
no,
Empire State.
you know
Yeah,
what
I
I'm
forget
talking.
that's what it's
Yeah.
called. Yeah. It was in one of the, it was right at the steps of the Capitol building, I think.
Okay.
And it
Giant.
was, which added its own
Yeah.
like level of like hilarity because it's such an
It's
enormous wide
monumental.
open
Yeah,
space
exactly.
and it's just like 12 people and like I think 25 people showed up total and like nobody, like they were there because it was like, oh, this is an anti-abortion rally, I'll show up. And then like, but they didn't really have, and then like 3 Proud Boys wearing clown costumes because that was a thing like at the time period. That was a meme that was going
Oh,
on,
the
clown.
honk.
Yeah.
Yeah, the clown world. Yeah.
Yeah, that type of thing.
Mhm.
And like, which I those are some of my favorite photos. But like,
Mhm.
it was the one time that I usually try to cover things relatively straight, but it was the one time I think I literally titled it has a sad day in Albany. And like, I just wrote the meanest piece of journalism I ever wrote. Everything was very straight and like, but it was just like mean to the point that the Patriot Prayer actually shared the article on their page decrying how bad the media was. And I was like, I think my traffic on that article is huge. But you know, one of the problems is that now is that a lot of the media, especially like independent progressive media, has kind of gone on and said, we really don't want to give them any attention anymore. We don't want to give. And so like now I basically, if I go to cover a far right thing, I cover it for my own, you know, for visu.news or maybe gregpalast.com, you know, and that's kind of it, because they just want to kind of, you know, a lot of the left really just wants to like, you know, ignore and move on from the far right, unless it's, you know, unless it's a way of covering like the act, like the counter protesting. And it just, that many people do that and many people do that really well. I'm kind of the I just don't cover that in that way. I'm able to blend in with the far right better, and I think I focus on that. That's why I focus on that so much.
So let's just talk about like Penn State. How do you cover like Alex Stein and the Proud Boys and those groups? Like, how do you dress? Are you trying to make it? Do you try to make it clear to counter protesters that you're not with them, or
you know, those kind of thing?
First off, I always recommend, if you are going to cover this, and I recommend not covering it, but, not only because then I can sell my footage.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding on that, but I recommend you need to have a buddy. You need to have somebody who you're attached with. I'm a really big guy, and like people don't try to start stuff with me usually anyway. But if, and also I'm a straight white blonde blue-eyed guy. I blend like you know, I blend like anyway. If I change my outfit, I had to change my clothes because of the fucking Proud Boys, because I used to wear like, I used to have like black polo shirt, black dress, and khakis, and I'm like, can't do that anymore. And so, but I still wear, like, I just have like, you know, like the Eddie Bauer stretch khakis, because if you get pepper sprayed or whatever, it's really good to have quick dry stuff. And then I have like, you know, I have some Costco polo shirts that are like, again, quick, you know, quick, everything, always wear everything quick dry, because you'll get doused in water, you'll get doused in stuff. And so you want something that's going to dry, especially during the cold weather. But it's number one, always have a buddy. Like I cover things with Fort Fisher, who's a great videographer. And he by far covers this stuff way more than me. But he actually at Penn State, he actually, for the first time ever, I had to like take care of him a little bit, because he got peppered. When I got bear maced, he got bear maced in the eye, like straight into the eye. And so, that's the first thing, is do that. Don't wear shirts with logos. Don't wear shirts with even sports teams. Keep your colors very bare basic. You know, recognize if you're going to go cover the Proud Boys, don't wear a black polo shirt. Don't wear, you know, don't look at what they wear and then wear something that is different but still boring. You know, I mean, if you're going to cover Patriot Front, keep a very strong awareness of like the outfits that they wear, like what colors they wear, and don't wear. I mean, it's just, you know, like it's kind of like don't go into the Crips neighborhood with red, blue. I don't
red. I think.
You know, just like have an awareness of that, because
do you wear like something that says press?
I mean, I have my press credentials and I have my 2 cameras around my
Okay.
thing. So usually that is fine enough. I mean, obviously you always have the problem of and I would say it's not a danger problem, but it's a good problem of getting people to talk to you. Is that like anybody that's anti-fascist, so basically not the Nazis, will be definitely concerned because they're like they look at you, people look at me and go, I have no idea where you're standing, on this. But but I don't wear all black and I don't wear anything because I don't. If the cops the biggest thing I'm always worried about is the cops messing with me and trying to say, oh, we thought you were a protester or whatever. I want to make sure that if they arrest me or if they hit me with a club, it's their fault, and that there's no BS that they can give me about, oh well, you were hanging out with the protesters. And like, I mean, one thing that I always do as well is that once I go up, I try to talk to a bunch of protesters and just kind of go, hey, I'm Zach with Nerf Photo, I'm Zach with whatever, the Progressive Magazine or whatever place I'm working for, and kind of just because it's also good to have, like, look at, I'm not covering, I cover things honestly, but I don't cover, it's like, I'm not like making sure, I'm like, well, I want to make sure both sides are covered here, because I'm like, one's Nazis and one's like, I'm sorry, like there's not 2 sides to this. There's Nazis and then there's everybody else. But
they're both extreme. We got the Nazis and we got the Antifa. What's the difference, really?
I mean, I always have the argument that, like, when because there's the argument around Unite the Right, which is like, well, the Antifa started it, and I'm like, well, first off, if you're a Nazi and you come into somebody's community, you started it. Yep. Like, if you come into somebody's community as a Nazi waving a flag of whatever bullshit that you're pushing, you started it. Like, by existing as a Nazi, you are inflicting violence on other people. I'm sorry. Like, it's like, we can have arguments about like, MAGA and that sort of thing. But if you literally are like either actually a National Socialist, like the NSM, or just some group like Patriot Front or something like that, I'm like, no, you're coming into this community and you're saying, I would like to commit violence on you. And that may be through ruling you and taking away your rights, or that may be physically immediately committing violence on you. That's why I think it's okay to punch a Nazi. But it's the thing. I'm sorry, I actually lost where I was going on that.
No, it's okay. Well, the last thing is the one thing, like the thing I admire about my friends that are like professional camera people, and I don't know if I have it, is the balls it takes, like, especially in public situations, to like, I have somebody I hired as a camera person, and they followed the subject of this documentary I'm working on around all day, and I would watch the footage, and like, they're walking into the farmer's market and like these people come up and are like, what are you doing? Like, what are you? And like, in that situation for me, I'd be like, flip off the camera, put it on the side.
Well, I mean, one of the biggest things that I learned from working with Greg Palast, and specifically, and also like working with Rick Rowley, he goes by Richard Rowley if you're like, but he's Rick. He tries to be very forward. He's Rick. But anyway, is that you just never turn off your camera. And that's like, because the Greg Palast at the time that I started working for him, he's working for BBC, and we had very strict rules that the only person that could tell you to turn off the camera was the director, was the producer, be a producer on our shoots. And if Myron Jones tells you to turn off your camera, you turn it off. That's fine. But if the subject tells you to turn off the camera, if anybody else, I don't mean
it that way. Like somebody says, I mean, like, how do you deal with like, like if you're an anxious person, like, how do you deal with that? People looking at you and stuff like that.
That's when it's like, you just have to get into the zone. I mean, just like if I'm running my camera and I'm like looking down, people can be talking to me or whatever. I'm just in that. It's like an ADHD thing for me, probably. But it's just like, just get in that zone and just go. You're there. It's always really, really helpful. I mean, one thing that I wish I could do more often is I wish I could work with an on-camera person more, is because one of the things is that, like, no, the on-camera person, or maybe the producer, if you're actually got that much budget that you're working with 3 people, then that person's job is to deal with the people who are trying to talk to you or trying to. Because your job is to get the shot. It's nothing else. And it is, yeah, you can be, it can come off as rude or anything like that. But you're like, I usually just mouth
busy.
I'm sorry. Like I just shrug and I'm just like, and then focus back. If the person that's on camera that you're talking about wants to deal with it, then they can do that. But if it's, just that random stuff, believe me, you always get that if you're following somebody. It was like I've covered unions and you cover a lot of things that aren't like violent protests or anything like that, or that, bad, covering, quote unquote bad people.
What do you do about, let me give you an example. I was working on a project and I sort of wanted to like get people looking miserable. So like people looking miserable at a bus stop and people looking miserable walking out of a Walmart in slow motion. And that was the idea.
Yeah.
And I had a camera guy who did it for me, but then I tried to do it on my own. I'm like, oh my God, I look like a fucking creep. Like, just who is this guy like with a camera? How do you deal with like, do you ever worry like, do these people think I'm like some weirdo that's like?
I mean, it always depends on like what the purpose is. Like if you're doing if it's more of like an art thing, then there's not. You just kind of have to be a weirdo. Like I mean, it's fine. Yeah. It is what it is. But if it's for journalism, I mean, then if it's for like a documentary or straight, just like a news piece, then I try to make if I shoot with a telephoto. I'm really big on that. And shooting with a telephoto.
Yep.
But also is just make yourself look like a news person as much as possible. I mean, one of the problems with the small cameras that we all kind of are using now is that everybody thinks news if they see if you have one of those big ENG cameras, they're like they don't care, or they go, "Ooh, I'm going to be on the news." But if you're a creep with a small camera, it's a different.
That's why I was actually thinking of buying like a CBS News hat. Actually,
I mean, I wouldn't. I would just like there's definitely buy a press hat, wear credentials, like make those things like kind of really obvious. If people ask you, just be like, and if somebody asks you, talk about it loudly. Be like, oh, I'm just shooting it for some B-roll for a documentary or always focus news documentary that I'm working on. And just say it loudly so you don't have to like answer that 7 times or whatever. But that's it's just kind of like look, the biggest thing is that when it always look like you're supposed to be there. It's like it's like if you're not doing like journal, walk into any room with a clipboard and you can get it. Like I forget what that bit is, but it's like just walk in and look confident and have like a clipboard and like it is amazing what you can walk into. I mean, I also started because before there was like a million digital outlets that like if I really want to get credentialed by somebody from some news publication, I can. Like I just have to like pitch 10 different places and somebody's gonna even take it for free, but at least I can say I have the imprimatur. I'm for again whoever. But I used to back in the Bush administration years, if I wanted to go to a protest or if I wanted to get like I didn't sneak into the inauguration of Bush the second with the 2004 or 2000, I guess it'd be 2005, but I had I just basically what I did was I had an empty bag and I had like all of my camera gear around my neck and I just walked confidently through the security and I didn't have any.
Right. Who are the who are like the craziest sort of people you think you've shot over the years, like maybe interviews or even less than that?
I mean, probably one of the weirdest interviews I ever did was I covered when I was covering the Ferguson protest, and you had down the street, you had a whole bunch of, you had where the protests were, the cops in front of the police station that was there, and then down the street, I heard rumors of there were supposed to be oath keepers who were on high places with sniper rifles, like keeping an eye, quote unquote, protecting the buildings. And you could literally see the silhouette of the guys like standing over there. And so I walked over to this like small. It was just like it was a dentist office and a hair salon. And walked over and it was just like kind of got their attention. Like walked up, hands up, kind of just like very whatever. My other friends were like waiting over there. Thankfully, a friend of mine knew like, or I knew somebody who was the I think high commander of the Alaska militia. Become friends with him, and so I was just like, oh, this is so and so, so I was supposed to talk. He said, said to give you a call or something like, or to come over and say hello. I don't know if they knew him or not, but it was like kind of my like in of like, okay, I know people in your world, and they're like told me to walk around to this space, just a space between the two buildings, and it was like the two office doors were on either side. You walk in, but then you look up and there's men with rifles up above me, and I'm just like, wow. I just walked into a shooting gallery. Cool. I just killed myself. But basically had a conversation with them, and then they're like, okay, come around back, and so I interviewed an Oath Keeper. Before I really even knew too much about who the Oath Keepers were. All I knew was that they were supposedly protecting buildings, and that they were, weren't military, they were whatever, and they had guns or whatever. But interviewed this guy. He was in full kit, like had a snow cap on, because it was freezing.
I know. Is this in the dentist office?
In the dentist office.
Yes,
yeah,
I remember this. Yeah.
And I interviewed him in a dentist office. He's sitting in this big, like, waiting room leather chair, and like we're being filmed at the same time, because we're like, okay, don't manipulate any of this. We're filming it too. And I was like, okay. And so like we're being filmed and interviewed in him, and like doing one of those like interviews where you're like, I don't really know. Like I have a vague idea. Not a huge amount had been written about the Oath Keepers at that time. Probably SPLC, and that's about, been really covering them, and that's kind of, that's about it. And certainly not the focus that obviously that we've had in the last couple of years. But I interviewed him, just had a very basic interview about him. Like I had an idea. I knew what their politics were, and I knew that what they were going to say their politics were, and what actually, because it's like they formed in 2009 and 2009, 2010, and my question has always been, it's like, it's very curious. I mean, it's like you talk about caring about civil rights, and caring about citizens, the rights that have been taken away from us during the Patriot Act, and yet you didn't form during the Bush administration. That seems odd to me, but you did form during Barack Obama's administration. Why was that? And they gave like a mumble mouth answer, which is what every single time I've asked that question to Oath Keepers, that's exactly the same thing. It was, oh well,
we were serving at the time.
It got worse under Obama, and I'm like, did it though? I feel like it was pretty bad. The difference is that you had the imagination that it got worse because it was a black man. I mean, come on. But you save that question towards the middle or the end, because you like might get him or whatever. But that was certainly the weirdest, just knowing that there's literally just piles of weapons basically in front of all these dentists, the office, like and men in full military kit, or fake military kit, laying on the floor sleeping. And so we also had to do the interview kind of quiet, because like we would end up waking people up. But that was probably one of the more surreal days, interviews of my life. I mean, since then I've interviewed other heads of militia in front of Capitol buildings, and had an interview. I still remember interviewing a guy that in Ohio who had a T-shirt that said "rooftop voter," and it was a skeleton with a sniper's rifle, and he had a 50 caliber sniper's rifle that he was carrying, and got to ask him, like, what does your shirt mean? And he was like, what do you think it means? And it's like, so, yeah, but
what's the scariest sort of group you've come face to face with over the years, or in the context? Was it Charlottesville? Or?
It's been rare that I've been. I think it's usually it's the larger implications of larger implications of what the group is. I mean, like the group that I'm kind of most, I don't want to say scared of, but like most worried about is, again, the Groypers. And like, I don't think any of those kids could take me in a fight. Like I'm not a fighter. I've never been actually genuinely in a fight in my life. Other than actually.
No, not the Groypers, the little kid, the GDL. Those guys, because they're like middle-aged, those are scary.
I mean, The Proud Boy, I mean, I did get into an argument with a Proud Boy once at the MAGA thing because I was filming something he didn't want filming. Him. It was like, you're in a public street, man. Like, that's literally, it was, I mean, one of the things is that's always good is the only times I really get worried is a few things that I've covered over the years when I know that I'm alone. I know that there's no one else there, or at least there's no one that I know that's there. And those are the times that worry me. Like, I'm more worried about getting hit by somebody with an angry person with a car that's going through a protest. Like, one thing that, like, Ford Fisher and I both had this conversation about covering the Penn State thing, and you see our photos and video of like us marching through the streets, covering them marching through the streets, and those are the things that actually like deeply worry me. That's actually like, those are the moments I get scared, because when I'm with a group of people that clearly aren't having the spatial awareness that they need to have, and kind of the things that keep them safe, which is you don't have spotters, you don't have, like, most of the protests that I cover that are, anti-fascist, they very clearly know they have, if they're marching on the streets and it's not like a legal protest, or even if it is, they've got a guy with a bike that's like 3 blocks ahead that's giving spotter, there's communication, talking back and forth, even if it's just texting or whatever. And they have somebody behind doing the same thing. And as they march, they, know to have awareness. And this group, unfortunately, I think they were just kind of like shocked that they were able to do it, that they were able to march through the streets and the police were just letting them do it. But there were still Proud Boys that were there. I mean, there's still people that attended this, tried to attend this speech by Gavin McInnes. I'm not going to give him the comedy show, which is what he wants, but the speech that he wants. And I'm just like, they all have cars. And we literally already had the problem of people driving up to there and then turning around because they were like, they didn't want to deal with it. But I mean, like, the number of times that I've witnessed, unreported type stuff. I mean, I've reported it, but I mean, like, not, obviously not, like what happened at the Unite the Right rally. But the number of times I watched a car drive through a group of protesters, and thank God people were able to jump out of the thing. That's what genuinely worries me, is that, most of these groups have the awareness enough that they're not going to start a gunfight, unless things get really bad. Unless there is sometimes escalation where it's just like, oh, this could go bad. This guy has a gun, and anti-fascist protesters are trying to push him out of the area or something like that. I'm like, this guy could start shooting. And again, not putting this on. That's not to say that the anti-fascists would be to blame or anything like that. I'm just saying it's just like, this could be a thing.
Combustible.
It's combustible, and it's like, and I get that people, you want to get this person out of here because he could turn it combustible, and so you need to get him out of somewhere or another. But anyway, like that doesn't necessarily worry me. I've had guns pulled on me all the time. And the probably the scariest moment actually was sitting at the Capitol it wasn't January 6th, actually. It was a couple days before, during the runoff that was happening in 2021, and there was all these Stop the Steal and militia groups that kept showing up at the thing, and a militia group showed up, and the big guy with a cowboy hat, rifle, AR-15 strapped on him, and the whole kit and everything like that. He's standing in front of the Capitol. I'm like, I want to get this shot that's like him with the Capitol behind him, the Georgia State Capitol behind him, and he was reading this. Basically, he was inducting everyone into the militia that was there. Everybody was loving it. And then, like, this one militia guy comes up, and I feel this metal drag across my shoulder and then push into my chest. And I look down, and it's a rifle. it's the
what?
Angry end of a rifle. And I'm just like, I don't know what to do. And he wasn't aiming at me. He just had it strapped on his front. And he wasn't paying attention because none of these assholes have any gun discipline whatsoever. And they don't give a shit because, they have their guns and that's all that matters. And I'm just like watching this happen. And I'm just like, I don't know what to do, because I don't want to. One thing to never do is grab somebody else's gun, that ends poorly. And so I was just like, kind of like, I kept filming and kind of just tried to get the guy's eye contact, and and eventually, like, I got his eye contact, and he saw that literally the angry end of his rifle was pointing dead into my chest. And I'm just like kind of looking terrified. And he's like, there was a moment where he's like, oh, kind of, and then he moved away. It was still, though, it was just like pointing in front of me. And I'm just like, what the fuck?
in a
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Coach.
No,
In situations like that, do you ever have to like pretend that you're like one of them? Like, I'm just a patriot like you.
No,
You know?
the only time I'll do that is I do some
Yeah.
undercover work.
Wow.
And it's like the lightest amount of, it's like the
Yeah.
laziest undercover work. Like
Yeah.
literally I'll have a name tag that says Zach Roberts on,
Yeah,
things like that. Which that was a mess up on my part. I forgot to use my middle names. But I'm covering right now, which I've talked about this multiple times. So if they don't know that I'm like covering a voter integrity group right now. And I went to one of their big conferences with Cletta Mitchell and down in Atlanta. And I just showed up and like, I was just like, what I pretended to be was basically a person who was supporting them and doing the same thing. So like I had a YouTube page and with like voter, like anything that I covered that like seemed right wing, I kind of posted. So it was all my own videos. It was all my own stuff, like stuff that's posted up on my actual page, but I just kind of like cross posted it over there and added different branding. And yeah, and people, it was fine. I was because it was like the worst case scenario that happens. I get kicked out of the meeting, and then I just get to hang out in a really nice hotel for the rest of the day because that's where I was booked.
So you're from New York. Did you grow up like in a sort of liberal area, I assume? Or?
Oh no, I grew up in Oswego County. For the most part, which is I mean, right now it's Trump country. It's always been pretty red, but it's
is that like Frankfurt?
Oswego is the closest town, is the biggest town in the county.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's like 45 minutes north of Syracuse.
Yeah, I've driven through New York a ton of times, so
yeah, it's right on the water. It's right on Ontario. And
by Rochester.
Okay. It's a hour half east of Rochester. Okay. I don't live there anymore or anybody, so I'm not doxing myself. But I'm also really open about where I used to live. Yeah, now I have a Confederate flag that's on my on the street that I grew up that my family grew up on.
Oh my God.
And so it's just like, and that popped up after the Unite the Right rally, which that was a super fun driving home. It took me several days to drive home because I was doing all these interviews and working on my piece. So it took me like 3 days to drive from Charlottesville to Syracuse. So, but by the time I got back there, they'd put up a Confederate flag up on their street. And what I love best about this is that this trailer, and it's like literally is like the crappy trailer on our street. And they've lived there longer than my family's lived on that street. So it's like they have no connection to the South whatsoever, other than they just want to put up a flag that says they're racist. I mean, that's literally what they wanted to do, is make sure that everybody on the street, including the family that has the Black Lives Matter flag like 2 houses down, which props to them because that's brave, because everybody on that street except for my family, they all have guns. They shoot at 8 o'clock at night. They go target practicing in their backyard. And the problem is that this is one thing that I think that we're in that, like, it's not suburban, but it's not like rural. Like, right. It is, you have to drive through rural, but our little, like the street in the area, like a bunch of people live there. But one of the problems that I'm seeing this in a lot of places is that you have these city and suburban folks who have this imagination that they want to get out of the city where it's dangerous, and they want to go to somewhere that they can shoot their guns and have their imagination of what rural life is. And as somebody who grew up there, no one wore camo. No one ever wore camo. You went deer hunting, you wore Carhartts, you wore whatever the cheaper equivalent is. Then Walmart came into our area, started selling this BS to everybody, and it's just like now everybody wears camo. Wow. You go to the Burned Dairy, you go to the Wegmans, and you go up there in camo, and it's like everybody's just cosplaying what they think that basically Southern redneck, which somebody who spent a lot of time in the South. In areas that are right wing, it's not how they do it. It's like this idea, this like duck hunter show, that like everybody.
Duck Dynasty.
Yeah, Duck Dynasty is like cosplaying that, and it's like, oh my God, like.
So we're sort of the opposite. I come from like very very blue, very urban. Like I've never shot a gun in my life. I've never gone hunting. I've ridden in a pickup truck like 5 times in my life, and they're so big now, and that's by the way. We got to put a stop.
I know.
These
No,
monster
I learned how to
trucks.
drive in an S10 pickup truck, and those are tiny. Like those are smaller than my
It's crazy.
Subaru now. Even my Subaru is ridiculously huge. Like I got it when I moved to Alaska. I bought a 2001 Subaru Forester, best car I ever owned in my entire life. Got it, had 65,000 miles on it. Drove the Alaskan highway back back home because I drove back home eventually and moved back. Ended up wrecking it in Syracuse, near I'm driving back to school. So it's ridiculous. I survived the Alaska highway during the polar vortex back in 2013 or 2000.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
But anyway, now I bought another because I'm like, I love this car so much. I absolutely when I bought a new car. Now it's these enormous
But I'm from this very liberal town and stuff. So like, for instance, my first trip, a project I'm working on is around Saratoga Springs. But so I've done the New York to Chicago trip. But the first time I did it, like I was so unprepared to do my first solo road trip, and I didn't even have my phone set up. And so I coming out of Chicago, I took a wrong turn, and I ended up in Indiana, and I saw my first Confederate flag. And this is an hour outside Chicago. It was so jarring. It was my body, I was where what is going on? Am I in deliverance and stuff? Yeah. So the reason I asked that is because you were in Georgia. I want to get to that. I gotta tell you, I've traveled through states and stuff. The red states sort of freak me out, knowing that these people, they have guns and
I mean,
stuff.
that's something I have to so I was feel bad to talk about Greg Palast this much, but that's something I try to explain to Greg a lot because he lives in he was born in Southern California, poorest neighborhood, whatever, pulled himself up, went to University of Chicago, great. He's literally a pull yourself up by your bootstrap story. And so I don't want to say that out of touch in that that type of out of touch, but he he has a master's in economics from Chicago. He's done well for himself. Other than journalism, that was a terrible financial decision for him. But before he made the stupid decision to go into journalism, he did well. But he lives in LA now in a very nice neighborhood, and the liberals, the conservatives there basically would be left wing, anywhere else in the country.
It would be lynched. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, being, it's but and then he also lived in the East Village, and so and those back when it was the East Village, not now when it's whatever. But and so trying to have, he's just oh well, go go in a small town and just do some filming, talk to some people, and I'm like, Greg, I don't want to get shot. You can't door knock anymore. I mean, a 15-year-old kid in Savannah was door knocking for Reverend Warnock and got shot through the door. He's I guess he's okay. I mean, okay as you can be. I think he got shot in the leg or something. But you can't do this anymore. I mean, you used to be able to even in my very redneck neighborhood, place where my family grew up. It wasn't a problem. People had guns, but it wasn't a thing. You wouldn't know that someone had a gun unless it was deer hunting season. And then you just know, we had posted signs, my family, my family had used to do contracting and stuff like that. My grandfather built a bunch of houses or whatever, land was stupid cheap 40 years ago when they moved to Oswego County. And so we have 200 acres up there, and it's just it is shut off. You cannot hunt. No one in our family can hunt on it. We have cousins or whatever that oh, can we come up? No, we don't allow that at all. But we're surrounded on every end with people with guns, and it just wasn't the thing. You didn't shoot in your backyard. There's a gun range down the road from us, and you can go shooting there. You can just do that. But for some reason, people are that's my right to shoot. That's completely changed. This idea, this cartoon idea of what rednecks are, of what it's my rights. That wasn't even a thing 10 years ago. That wasn't even a thing 10 years ago in the South. It was a stereotype that existed, but it wasn't pervasive. It wasn't sold as a thing within, within any media as a thing that you'd want to be. It was a cartoon thing of a stupid person that did things. And now it's like, I got to have my big fucking, $75,000 truck where I'm going to pretend to be a poor person, basically, which is hilarious. Like, you have to pretend to be a working person and you're buying $100,000 truck. Those trucks that you see that are like, you can, I'm 5'9" and you can barely see the top of my head when you walk by. Those trucks are like $75,000, $85,000, like bare out of the factory, like nothing else, if you can get them, because they sell so many of them. And you're just like, you're pretending to be like, I always have a rule. This is like side rant. Obviously, everything's a side rant here. But I have a rule. If you see a truck that's clearly more than 1 year old and it doesn't have scratches and dings and dents or paint on it or whatever, that person is cosplaying a working person. And to me, it's offensive. Like, I'm not offended by a lot of things, but it's like I'm offended by that as a person. My dad who, whatever, it's a different conversation. But my dad, like everybody in my family worked and built things, and so we all had trucks. My grandfather had a very nice car collection because he did very well for himself, but he still had the company truck that was beat up because you ran it until it didn't.
Well, let me anyway, tell a story. Like, when you get your drone, I think you'll discover this, but maybe you already have. Well, when you, I'm like you, you've done probably way more driving than I have, but when you drive across America, like, there's so much like open land, right?
Yeah.
And you'll see, like, so I was in Schuylerville, Schuylerville by Saratoga Springs.
Okay, yeah.
And I saw this like beautiful field, and there's like no houses around. There was like a sort of a house across the road, and I just pull over just to film this field.
Yeah.
And this car comes rushing up, and the guy's like, I own this land. Just so hostile. It's like as like a city person, the fact that like people will be like, I'll fucking kill you for like taking a picture.
Yeah, they go from zero.
Field.
I mean, like, it's like if you got somebody in the city that's acting like that or being like that person has an issue. Like, that's the guy in the neighborhood that that you're like, you don't mess around with. But like in a lot of areas, like this obsession with like
private property.
I mean, obviously you have an obsession with personal property. I get really angry when we have four-wheelers that just drive through our backwoods there. When I have dogs that are we have all of our dogs are off leash, and it's just like one of these days a hunter or somebody's that's how we're gonna lose a dog. We've already almost lost a dog once because some jerk put a trap down. That was many years ago, but it's completely nuts. I mean, like, I really worry. Like, you film, you got to get B-roll of like rural areas when you're doing things, and like, I don't like to leave my car because I want to be able to drive off immediately if something's happened. It's like, I mean, that's again, it's like with my Subaru, it's like this is another like rule that
you're a liberal now.
Well, I mean, my Subaru looks like every other car. It looks like every other SUV, but it's a white car. I made sure, I badly want to put stickers on it, but I know for like, that's how people track you. You don't put stickers on it that give any idea of who you are. You don't want to be, if you're going to the same place twice, you don't want to be people to remember you are. And so like, this is all part of the world that I think every journalist, unless you're like with a local news station and you're like, you do want that, you do want WSTV or whatever on the side of your truck. Yeah, obviously. But if like you're an independent freelancer, I don't recommend driving anything that looks recognizable. And driving something that blends really well. I tell you, I used to have New York plates on my car, and now I have Virginia plates. And like, I can see people looking, you drive into a neighborhood and you're filming where people understandably and correctly, like, this is whatever, that if you see, it's like, why is this guy driving in this neighborhood that like it, especially if you go to like a place that's like no outlet. And so it's like, it is a community, it's like, it's a community upon itself, is this one road. And you're driving just to get B-roll or driving to interview somebody's house. Like, people obviously are going to check you out. But I get it. But like, now I have Virginia plates, and it's like, it doesn't make
Totally do.
people don't give me like 2 seconds to look. If I had a New York place, it was like, why is this person out of here? Like, which again, I get it. Like if somebody drove down my street that had, I don't know, Texas plates, I'd be like, oh.
No, but
maybe I wouldn't have a conversation with them because I don't care. But like also like people who get really, I totally am perfectly fine with people like walking up. If you're filming on a street, people walk up to you and go, "Hey, what you doing?" Because that's what you do in a good community.
Yeah.
Somebody was filming out. I mean, if somebody filmed out front of my house, I'd be a little concerned just because there's a school across the street. But if somebody was doing that, I would probably walk out there and go, "Hey, what's going on?"
But in these rural areas, it's crazy how like it's like I'll be like taking a video of a tree in like a valley, and like somebody will roll up and be like, "It's private property." I'm like, what? I'm not like a reconnaissance for like ISIS or something. Like, what do you think I'm doing? Like,
That's, I mean, it is obviously in that situation, like you just gotta roll out. Like, hey, okay, I'm sorry. Just go, bleed ignorance or whatever, and then get in your car and drive off or whatever, and find a different thing. But I mean, like one thing I always end up doing is I recommend, this is just a general thing to anybody who might be listening, is like have really generic cards, like have like cards that you can hand people and be like, hey, just that says photographer, says whatever, and like with an email, don't get into a cell phone or anything like that. Nobody needs your cell phone number, and just be like, hey, shoot me an email. Like I'm happy to send you a print of that. I've made friends that way. Like like I'm taking, somebody has a really interesting looking house or something like that, and be like, oh, I'd love to send you a print. I don't care.
That's smart.
And it deflates the situation because it gives you this idea that you're a professional, like they think you're a professional then if you're going to send them a print. And so like even if it is like a house with a Confederate flag, like obviously these people are proud of their house, they're proud of that flag being out there, they wouldn't put it out there. And so you're like, oh, I'm happy to send you for, I'm just taking photos, working for wire service or whatever, whatever the story is that I'm working for. And it like that usually can deflate, and sometimes
what I like to do is to just go up to them and say, hey, there's nothing to worry about. I'm working for George Soros. We're doing some Antifa.
That was the last time we ever heard of you.
We're actually going to be starting a UN vaccination center.
Right here. We're actually buying this land right now.
Yeah. It's going to be half owned by Antifa, half owned by Fauci.
Yeah. And we're having drag shows every single day.
But only for kids under 6.
Okay. Yeah.
Whatever happens, happens.
Oh my God.
No. All right. So let's get to Georgia. I've never been to the South. It's just kind of scares me. But
all you have to do, I mean, people seem to think the South, if you're if you ever in Illinois, I mean, you have been to the South. You've driven through upstate New York. That is the South. Let's stop. I mean, one thing that I think we should always stop pretending is that the South is any different than like rural areas, like an hour outside of any major city in America. Like you go an hour outside of New York.
This is true.
Holy crap. Some places in the Catskills and things like that. Like I still say I see more. I used to see more Confederate flags in my commute when I lived in more rural upstate New York in Oswego County than I saw when I'd go down to Georgia.
Wow.
Absolutely. And that's kind of switch back a little bit more because like now the sad thing is now people have replaced things. No, I mean, we used to have like there's a handful of houses if you drive from like Oswego to Rochester, that little strip is one of the most conservative right-wing way out there thing. One of the larger anti-vax protests I've ever been to was in Rochester outside of a children's hospital. And which is disgusting to me. That was actually one time I didn't file anything from a thing because I just literally started getting arguments with people. I was just like, I was having a bad day, and I actually.
Do you know Kelly Weil? She's from upstate.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, Kelly's great. Great
She's
book,
from upstate New York. Yeah.
Where's her book? I have her book somewhere here.
Earth book. Yeah, she's.
Yeah.
You're in PA now, right?
Oh, I'm actually in Norfolk, Virginia.
Oh, you're in Virginia. That's where you. Okay. Mm-hmm. I was going to say, for some reason, I thought you were from PA. Have you heard about all these Nazis that are moving to Lancaster, Pennsylvania?
I mean, that's we're already that way. I mean, that's Doug Mastriano's region. And so like, yeah, no, Lancaster is a fantastic town. I got friends there. I may end up moving there in the next couple of years. But
what a coincidence.
Well, I mean, this is one of the reasons, like, I got friends down here, which is why I moved down here, because I just needed to get out of upstate New York, just closer to, where things happen. One of the reasons I moved down here is it's the center of Liberty University, Regent University is all along here, all the big Christian churches. I mean, Virginia is the new. I mean, the new, one of the hotbeds of the more respectable far right, I would say. Like, you don't have like you don't have a yokel with a Confederate flag and a shotgun on the back of his truck, but you do have, some
Franklin
of the most
Graham.
Exactly. Yeah.
So how far are you from DC?
3.5 hours.
Okay. So let's get into your documentary with Greg, Vigilante. Let's talk about let's talk about this Georgia race. I don't think I'm ever gonna get over, like, I literally would just find myself thinking randomly, I can't believe that Georgia Republicans voted in the primary for Herschel Walker. I mean, like, I understand the Trump endorsement. I understand he was a football idol. But the first interview he gave, I remember vividly, on Sean Hannity. And the problem with talking about Herschel Walker is I feel racist, because it's like talking about, I feel like I'm doing stereotypes, but he literally went on Hannity and he said, we don't need one educator. I think the quote was, we got people walking around with 2-3 educations. We need to be one America, one education.
Yeah. I mean, he is just a cartoon of an idea that, like, but I mean, he's the person that that if Republicans have to vote for an African American person, this is the person they want. Because I mean, here's the thing: is that they knew it was never more obvious with anybody else that he's a guy that was going to be controlled by other people. He very clearly wasn't able to put two thoughts together and make a sentence. But that they knew then that the people with, Trump people were going to be the people that were going to, tell him what to vote, tell him what to do with it. I think everybody kind of knew that. Everybody had an idea. You're not voting for Walker. You're voting for the people around him. It was kind of a bit like, George Bush, W. And like, we all knew that W wasn't really the guy running the show, but you're voting for Dick Cheney and you're voting for Donald Rumsfeld and you're voting for all the people who are surrounding this man who also, speaking of people who cosplay cowboys, but that's who they voted for, and that's who they knew. And the fact that he said all these terrible things, did all these terrible things, especially terrible things for if a liberal did that. If a Reverend Warnock had paid for multiple abortions and done these things, I mean, there's no chance he would have ever been able to be elected. But he probably wouldn't have been able to be elected nominated as a Democrat. Like, I mean, because it was just like how sloppy and terrible of a person he was, just as a person, not as a politician or anything else. It just pretty clearly he is just a dude who doesn't know what anything to do with his money, and the fact that he, for some reason, people flock to him because he's a college football star. I mean,
so you were there. Were you there during the Republican primary at all?
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, I remember watching like a bit of the debates, and they had this, generic Republican guy, Gary Black, I think, the agriculture commissioner.
Yeah.
And he could complete a sentence.
Yeah.
Like, he knew, like, I'm not going to say who told me, but I had lunch with this sort of operative guy and who knew Walker and stuff. And he said, Herschel Walker does not know how many senators there are.
Yeah.
Like, he would not know that there.
But I mean, here's the thing, is that neither the we used to that used to be a thing that was important. I mean, if you want a leader, I mean, I want a leader who's smarter than me. Like, I think I'm decently smart. But I want somebody who, if I meet somebody and talk to them and go, oh, we're at the same level, that's uncomfortable. Like, I want somebody who's smarter than me, or at least is more, has like more, I don't know, more leadership qualities than me.
Did you ever ask any of these Georgia Republicans, like, so you voted for Herschel in the primary rather than Gary Black? Do you know that he's an idiot? What would they say?
In general, I mean, it's no different than with Donald Trump, and it's no different than any of the other candidates that have been put up. They know that he, on the sheet that they got handed out or on the website, these are the things that this guy believes, and they believe the same things as me. And also, but the fact that he doesn't know how many senators there are, or doesn't know what he had for lunch earlier in the day, doesn't matter either, because they know that if he goes into Washington, it means that likely that the Republicans will be controlled in the Senate, and that it'll stop Reverend Warnock.
No, I get that in the general, but but
it doesn't matter. I mean, so the fact that he is, I mean, the biggest thing as well is that if you're voting for Walker, what it is you're doing is you're owning the libs. Voting for the vanilla Republican candidate who is, believes other things. Voting for Brian Kemp, voting for whatever. That's boring. It's not exciting to vote for Brian Kemp. Oh my God. It's not in the same way it's not exciting to vote for Joe Biden. It wasn't, other than the people. Joe Biden won because it was a choice between 4 more years of a living hellscape, or just a slightly less worse hellscape, but it's a lot more boring, and people voted for boredom in that one. The Democrats vote for boredom, and Republicans vote for excitement, at least since Trump came along. And you have to be that way. Even Brian Kemp, one of his first campaign ads for governor was, I got a pickup truck and
I'm gonna get the
illegal immigrants. It's and things like that. And he doesn't even really run that way anymore. If you listen to his speeches, oh my God. I tell you, I don't miss going to Trump rallies, since I haven't been credentialed for one for ages. But I do at least miss the fact that it would be an interesting show, at least. You go to Brian, but I mean, the banal evil is still evil. And that's what Kemp is. I mean, Kemp is he's the difference between Kemp and any of the other, Trumpites, is that Kemp is effective at his job.
Yeah, let's talk about I've seen a strange amount of sort of pundits left and right, Chuck Todd, the National Review guy, all sorts of, the Wall Street Journal wrote this, and they're like, Kemp won his election by this big margin. Maybe he's a real contender in 24.
The New York Times, one of their members of the editorial board wrote a piece that was that basically endorsed Brian Kemp for president. So because they want to go back to normality. Everybody wants to go back to this boring, banal evil. They're fine with evil. They just don't like this level of control. How much they have to do work. I think honestly part of it is just and it's I'm happy back when they used to be able to just take a press release and write a news story. I mean, I don't think it's that. I mean, obviously a ton of people made a lot of money off of Donald Trump and their books. Maggie, they all got New York Times bestsellers off of writing, palace intrigue bullshit. And so they definitely want Trump, but they want somebody like him to be still around because it's exciting. But there is amongst the kind of liberal, I mean, Nancy Pelosi said it. It's you need a strong Republican Party. It's no, you don't. No, you don't. Well, you don't need. Yes, it is good to have two sides, but you don't need a strong Republican Party. We've had a strong Republican Party for the last 40 years, and the country has been kind of sliding down a goddamn
we don't have universal
so we don't need that
right
now.
Wait,
maybe.
what I was gonna say was much more basic. It relates to this absurd governor's race we had in Illinois, which I don't blame you if no one knows. So basically, it was It was actually sort of funny.
Yeah.
J.B. Pritzker, the Illinois governor, the billionaire, they literally like looked at the Illinois Republicans and like I think he literally had one of his aides like go find me the biggest kook. And they found this guy named Darren Bailey.
Yeah.
And he literally has a deep Southern accent.
Yeah.
Like deep Southern accent preacher man who says that one abortion is worse than the Holocaust.
Yeah.
You know, and like just wants to ban abortion. Like he was the perfect candidate. But it was like I was in like a movie or something. I would post on Twitter. I'm like, do the Illinois Republicans realize they're about to nominate a guy in Illinois with a deep Southern accent? And no one would discuss it. I'm like, oh, this is the real
his bigger
political
problem. He's the dude that had ads that basically just shit talked Chicago constantly, right?
Yeah, he's a
like,
hellhole.
I mean, it's hilarious. I mean, like it's one thing. It's the one thing if you're from Pennsylvania and you go, well, this guy's from New York City and New York City is a hellhole. It's another thing if you go, you're running for governor of Pennsylvania and go, well, Philadelphia sucks. You're like, I mean, what are you doing? People live there, and people in Chicago, even the right wingers that live in Chicago, a lot of them think that Chicago's okay.
Well, it didn't really matter. He was hopeless, but literally no one talked about the accent. Yeah. And so I'm like seeing like the Wall Street Journal's like Brian Kemp, he's a real contender. I'm like the guy, like obviously Bill Clinton and people like Democrats. I think it's different. They can be Southern, like Mitch Landrieu, Bill Clinton, because of whatever. But when a conservative, super like fundamentalist sort of Christian Republican with a deep Southern accent, it's like I think Haley Barbour admitted this. Like, that is never gonna work on a national level unless he's like some kind of super charismatic. But just all you have to do to know Brian Kemp will never have a chance on national level is just listen to the accent. It's too deep.
I don't think so. I mean, I think that he, first off, the accent is a ploy. You can go back.
Really?
The accent has been played up more than it used to be.
Really?
Somebody who, a politician that worked with him ages ago, recommended that when we talked to him, and recommended to go back through his back when he was in the House. And check out what his voice sounded like.
John Kennedy, who went to Oxford, who's the
well, I mean, it's like George again, it's like George Bush, and I think that like that's going to be played up quite a bit. And like George Bush used to be very well spoken. Maybe not very well spoken, but well spoken enough. And didn't have any. He's not from Texas. Didn't spend enough time in Texas to like earn that, or not earn, but even get that like drawl that he fakes. And so it just becomes part of his shtick. And like you can certainly hear it when he's doing more standard interviews, that it's just not there as much as when he does speeches. And it's something he obviously can turn off and turn on a little bit more. And
he seems boring though. I mean,
he is boring. Yeah. And that is actually the problem. I think he'd be a great vice presidential candidate behind somebody. I don't know who that is. It's certainly not going to be DeSantis or something like that. Like, but he is, if the Republican Party had any control, like he'd be a great Mike Pence for somebody. And so, but he also, I mean, there is a scenario where Trump can't run for some reason. And it becomes a DeSantis and Brian Kemp race. And I mean, I think DeSantis wins that outright because of the primary, basically just because of the primary system. But I mean, what worries me is that like if Brian Kemp somehow magically wins the nomination, mind you, he has not even said that he's running. He's also more than, I think his focus is on the Senate. I think he's going to, because he's termed out at the end of this term. And then that aligns right away with running for Senate against Ossoff. and I
Yeah.
think that he'll win that race.
Yeah.
And I mean, the demographics of Georgia have been changing. Like, I mean, I've never seen anything like. I've been coming to Georgia for the last like 9 years, and the demographics have changed. Like, it's a different state. I mean, like,
Wow.
it has gone from a red,
Wow.
very red right-wing state, and then I still remember we had a conversation with Martin Luther King III, and back in it was Al Jazeera piece, so it was 2014, and we talked to him, and one of the most important things he said, why is Georgia red? It shouldn't be. And he started listing the demographics of Georgia. It's like any other state that has these demographics is a blue state. And so why is this state red? And it's like, well, the answer is voter suppression and lack of participation. And they, you know, I mean, because I mean, there's both voter suppression and then people who suppress their own vote by not using it. And one thing that the New Georgia Project did, Stacey Abrams' group, is that they just got everyone fucking registered. Like, there is not, I don't think that there's a person in the state of Georgia that's eligible that isn't registered right now, or refuses to be. Like, those are the two options. If you have any interest in voting, you're registered, or you're just a person who's like, I don't participate in this democracy thing. But like, they did everything. And I credit, again, Stacey Abrams is the leader, but Nsé Ufot, who just left. I may be pronouncing her last name wrong. I always get it wrong. But she is she's starting a new group. She just left New Georgia Project this year, but she is probably the most important person in the state of Georgia. And the fact that she's starting a national organization right now, which I don't know how much she's talking about right now, but that'll be a whole different piece that hopefully I'm working on. But she's by far the backbone of the fact that Donald Trump isn't president right now, the fact that there's 2 United States senators is because of Nsé. And the Democratic Party should be thanking her as much as possible, but they aren't, because they're idiots. But
I thought it was very strange, like, after the 2020 election, like, the Republicans were quite positive. Like, they're like, oh, we did better with Latino and Black men. Yeah. And I didn't see anyone making the obvious point that, like, Georgia used to be a solid red state, like, this is the South, and now they are losing it. Like, that's a huge thing. But and I want to get to the doc in depth in a second, but I just can't resist this because it's just amazing, like, these candidates, because I think Herschel Walker, like, you could make an easy case, is one of, if not the worst. I don't know. Has there ever been a worse candidate? Maybe. I mean, not.
Probably for a statewide elected office.
Oh yeah, sure.
Probably not. I mean, I can't think of one other than Donald Trump. I think is actually worse.
No, and not as far as like ideology, but like
I know not ideology,
mentally
but
not.
No, but I mean, but I mean, let's go through and think about all the scandals, everything that Donald Trump was. The fact that he is now basically the de facto, he is the leader of the Republican Party and also the right in general, not just the party, is the fact that, first off, he's a New York liberal who he basically was like, got his start on the Oprah show. Like, I mean, he donated a decent amount of money and was a supporter of abortion. He walked on stage at the NRA, which I was at that meeting when he walked on stage and talked about how he didn't really know much about guns, got the NRA endorsement somehow.
2 Corinthians, yeah.
I mean, he had his sons come out with and then they talked about guns, but he's just like, I don't know much about guns, but like my sons do. And, his sons are big game hunters. So, they know how to shoot the side of a barn. But, you go through everything. You have the sex scandal. He has all the same sex scandals or whatever. You go through somehow. And also he's a billionaire, like he's a billionaire media tycoon or whatever he is. And it's just like, you go through and he just like, literally, if he ran as a Democrat, the Republicans would be like, oh my God, I can't believe what the Democrats are doing. Well, but he ran as a Republican and says a bunch of racist things and you get it. I mean, that's
with Walker. I just meant like, he cannot finish a sentence. But what I was going to say was, but before Walker, I thought Kelly Loeffler was one of the worst politicians I've ever seen. I don't know if you remember when Kemp announced that he was picking her to run for the Johnny Isakson seat. She gave a speech, and I was like, "Is this a robot?" It was the most wooden. It was like, "It's an honor to run in Georgia, a state." I mean, it was it just because she was rich?
She was just boring and rich. I mean, she's the same reason. I forget what the rich was it former head of Chrysler woman who's now like she's a anti-Trumper but
Carly Fiorini.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Carly. Yeah. You know, I mean, it's just I mean, that was what they attempted to do. To the Republican Party attempted to do is to push up a couple, corporate, conservative types or whatever, that doesn't sell anymore. It's you have to, if you're going to be a corporate type, you have to pretend to be a country boy, like my governor here in Virginia. You have to put on a weird vest all the time, but it's just such a weird shtick.
He looks like Brett Kavanaugh.
I know, right? That? Yeah, he's like Brett Kavanaugh's dad, like that. Yeah. I mean, even though somehow they're probably about the same. If he's actually, I think he is older. He's got to be older than Brett Kavanaugh. Brett Kavanaugh, like for Supreme Court justices, is like 12. So he's young, which is terrifying. But because he'll be there for another 20 years. No, they try that, and you have to find some sort of shtick. But I mean, like in Georgia, you don't have to. Once you get through the primary, I mean, again, the problem is the primary system is that was it you I was having this conversation with on Twitter? It was the fact that like you have on the Democratic side is that the primary system is basically set up to push forward the most like boring vanilla. Will be able to compete in the national race candidates or in the statewide, whatever it is, race. And the Republican Party is to do the exact opposite. That whatever the easiest motherfucker they can find, that's going to win,
Literally, this is one of the things I've been like wondering. I'm like, is Steve Bannon like a double agent? Because literally, I was like thinking about this. Yeah. He would have every primary candidate in a Republican primary and every race, Senate, even like local, like he would have all of them on his show, and immediately he would like force them in a corner and like basically force them at gunpoint to do election denial.
Yeah.
He'd be like, so you're part of the November, he would say this stupid term like, oh, so you're part of the November 6th movement to get to the bottom of what the shenanigans, right?
Yeah.
And they all had to say that, because if they didn't, it's like you're pathetic.
Yeah, well, of course. I mean, it's the litmus test. I mean, that's their weird version of their litmus test. I mean, the one. I mean, it does annoy me on the you have on the liberal Democrat side is that you can't have those. It's like, oh well, we can't. Like Nancy Pelosi is strongly against the idea of even having abortion be a litmus test thing. And so, I mean, I think actually Bernie actually did that too. Like Bernie was supporting a candidate who was not pro-choice, and which I think it's just like the most basic bar at this point is to be like the idea that women have a right to choose is like it doesn't seem like even a liberal issue to me. It actually is vaguely libertarian, but can't have that. I don't know. I don't know where we go from here. So
it's so I want to talk about the documentary, and then I want to get to some broader, because I don't want to keep you forever. So I want to get to this broader discussion about where we are now. But let me just play devil's advocate, just for the sake of setting you up. There was this big narrative that, Biden went down to Georgia and he talked about the, quote unquote, voter integrity. What is it? SB
202.
SB 202. And he said the words Jim Crow, and Mitt Romney got all of pearl clutching. How dare you? And there was sort of a narrative that, we had high turnout after that bill passed in 2020, and we had high turnout, and so the Democrats overreacted.
Yeah.
How do you and Greg respond?
Well, first off, we didn't. Sorry. Well, first off, I turned off my mic. I censored myself. We didn't have high turnout. We had spectacularly low turnout. When you go for your ratings of high turnout, and you only compare them against like the previous midterm, I think we got to stop with that. And the fact that like this was just as vital of an election as 2020 was, and we had spectacularly low turnout. We had a million people less voted. Let me actually bring up the numbers. I got them somewhere around here. And you had less people being able to vote by mail because SB 202 massively cut down you had to basically add a license info in there. You had to do a bunch of other things. It was very difficult to get your ballot thing. So you ended up your absentee ballot. So you ended up getting a whole bunch of problems with that. And so you ended up having to, sorry, I'm like looking up the numbers that's why I'm messing up here.
Yeah, no problem.
But you ended up, they ended up shutting off 77% of the mail-in drop boxes. So you actually had a massive drop. We had over 100 drop boxes in Atlantis County in Fulton, and then it went down to like 7, I think it was, or it was 25 or something. Massive drop, 77% drop in mail-in drop boxes in Atlanta. Yet it actually, the numbers per person ended up going up in the rest of the state, and then you had less polling places. You had all these different things that SB 202 pushed forward, and you had shockingly high numbers of people voted under those things because they waited in line for over an hour and a half. They pushed through it. You had groups like New Georgia Project and that sort of thing doing the hard work of making sure the vote was actually counted. If you didn't have these groups and people didn't wait in line for unbelievable amounts of time in pouring rain and cold or hot, depending on which election we're talking about, you wouldn't have this. So they're putting, again, they do this every single time they push forward some voter suppression methods, and then they go, oh, look at, voting hasn't changed. It's like, yeah, because people on the ground, progressive groups like New Georgia Project, are doing the hard work of making sure that people are able to vote, working through them on legal issues and literally waiting with them in line just outside the barrier with food, because now if you give somebody a bottle of water in line, you're a criminal. And so doing all of these things, and you have all these groups. If you didn't have all these groups doing this work, you wouldn't have the high voter turnout. But then you'd end up losing these elections because people would lose their right to vote or wouldn't be able to vote. And so this idea that like, oh, because you actually had people show up and vote, say because they want to do something that they're legally able to do, somehow it's not voter suppression. It's all such bullshit. And the fact that the mainstream media just eats it all up because they just reprint press releases from the Republican part from Brad Raffensperger at the Secretary of State's office and Brian Kemp. They always want this good story, which I totally understand. The people that waited in line for over an hour and a half and with no water, with no nothing, no bathroom break, no toilets made available and anything sort of thing, and the fact they're heroes. And the fact that Brad Raffensperger and Brian Kemp want to latch on to that work is disgusting, because they have done everything in their power to do it. We talked to people in line that have been waiting for over 45 minutes and that sort of thing, and had another half hour to go. And we asked them, like, don't you find this insane? Don't you find, like, just basically trying to get people to react and like in a what we would think, I would be very, very angry. And every single person we talked to, I went to a mostly African-American polling location for early voting, and everyone's just like, it's what you got to do. It's Georgia. It's voting in Georgia. This is what it is. And they're conceded. This is what you have to do. They've conceded the point that we can't fight, basically can't fight City Hall. You can't fight this. You just have to outwork it. And that only lasts for so long. And the fact that we had the runoff, the fact that Stacey Abrams lost by hundreds of thousands of votes, the fact that we had this, to me, just shows the fact that people are just tired, and this is not going to keep lasting. You can't keep telling people. I mean, I first time I voted was in the 2000 election. Every single election that I've had since then, it's the most important election of our lifetimes, and it's just like, yeah, I guess they are. I mean, I guess every single time, because the fact that the Democrats are either unwilling or are not capable of fighting off this voter suppression, and the Republicans they do such a good job of it that they've convinced people that voter ID is a necessary thing. The fact that like Jimmy Carter signed off on voter ID being a thing, even after judges and studies and everything like that had proven that it suppresses the vote, and it suppresses specifically people of color's votes. And we have two parties that are okay with this, and they think it's reasonable that, oh, it's okay that the drop boxes used to be outside and now they're inside and only available during 9 to 5 hours. And you're like, well, okay, so who are the people that need drop boxes? They're the people that work all day and can't leave their jobs.
Right.
I mean, one of the things, I mean, this is very much a sidetrack, but like one of the things that like, it's always an amazing disconnect, I think, from like the previous generation and my generation, the either older Gen X and boomers, is that I was like, well, my mom could never understand when I got my first job working at Barnes & Noble. She couldn't understand why I couldn't pick up the phone while I was at work, or why I couldn't, run out and go do an errand and come back, and like, why couldn't I get this stuff done during normal working hours? And I'm like, because I'm working. I can't leave the office. I can't leave the store. Like, this is not a thing that is acceptable in most jobs. Like, people who have office jobs or run their own business, yeah, I can, now that I'm a freelance thing, if I need to go to the store right now or after this interview, I can run out to the store and go do that and come back, and then come back to doing work.
Yeah, but now
you can't do that.
Now you got the AI tracking your productivity.
Yeah. I mean,
right?
or just
exactly.
You got a manager who says, like, it doesn't matter whether it's a doctor's appointment. It doesn't matter whether it's your kid, kids you got in trouble at school and you need to leave. Or if it doesn't matter, even though legally you're supposed to be able to vote, but like, or legally you can't take off the work. If you're going to say, oh, I need, you can say the law only allows for a very small amount of time to be able to take it off from time to work. So like, I remember the last day of early voting, I always make sure that I'm at a polling location and like right at the end of the line. I have video of it up on Twitter, and it's one of the saddest things I think I've ever filmed, because it's just the banality of this law and voting restrictions. It was 7:00 on the dot. A woman with a stroller comes up, she just got out of work, and she comes up and goes to the end of the line, but she stopped from going into the line because a police officer told her, sorry, the line's cut off. It's 7:00. Wow. And she tried to argue. She's like, it's 7:00 though. Wow. It's not 6. So 6:59 is actually the last time I vote. And the cop was just like, I'm sorry. And it's like, and it was just, it was an African-American cop. It was just like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, this is what I was told to do. And so it's just like, and also, I mean, there's maybe, my worst case scenario is that like, he would have let her in, but there's a camera there, so she can't let her in, whatever. But like, filmed it, and she just was like, you just saw the like, and she immediately got on her phone. She's like, I can't, they won't let me vote. They won't let me get in line. And she's like, I don't know how I'm going to do it. Yeah, she's got a baby, and she's about to wait for 2 hours in a freaking line, which is disgusting to begin with. But then now she has to go back. What is the chances that she was going to be able to vote on Tuesday? What are the chances that she was able to get off 2 hours from work if the voting lines were that long? I mean, thankfully voting lines weren't that long on election day. But if you work from the polls are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Why are these elections on weekday? I mean,
never mind. I mean, there's arguments to be had.
Yeah.
All that stuff. What I don't understand, the biggest thing is, why aren't they open from 6 a.m. to 10? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I mean, this idea is some biggest argument I get into when I do get into arguments with right wing. I'm like, why do you need? I don't understand why people need the vote counted that night. Why do I need to know? It's great for news people because we get to have like, draw everything together. But I mean, we usually don't find out now. Like we didn't find out that there was going to be a runoff until like 11:30 at night. So it's past news anyway. So it doesn't matter. Most people are asleep. Other than people like us, who are like, oh my God, we need to find. I mean, like, I don't care. I mean, like, it doesn't make any difference to me whether I find out that night, unless it's like if it's a clear victory, it's like you can whether it be polling or whatever, you can be like, okay, yeah, no, I got it. Yeah, Brian Kemp won. That was a pretty clear victory there. A couple 100,000 votes, you can tell. But it's like something when you're talking about just a couple thousands of votes in a state with, that's voting where 4 million people were voting.
Two things to back up your point. One is apparently Walker almost won. So it was still, like basically if the GOP had nominated a guy who could complete 2 sentences in a row, he probably would have beat Warnock.
I keep hearing that argument. I don't know. I think that the one of the biggest things I think that people miss is the importance of owning the libs in elections now. The fact that like you can have an incompetent fool running for elected office, but the fact that it pisses off the libs is the most important. It is. I can't describe. I mean, mind you, again, the type of Republicans and type of conservatives that I talk to are obviously their own weird subset of conservative talk.
No, that's what it's about. Yeah.
But if you consume any conservative media at all, it is 90% of it is, haha, we own the libs in one way or another. It's, these people are ridiculous. Haha, we own the libs. And the fact that we could get elected a African-American guy who has clearly has CTE problems and also loves to say stupid shit, and says it whether knowingly or unknowingly, God only knows. And that is, I think, so much of it. If you had just put up a banal, that's my kind of word of the day, Jesus, just a boring candidate, I don't know if people would have gotten. I mean, very clearly, people weren't excited about him. I mean, they wouldn't vote for him.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, but I mean, the double problem is that somebody like Reverend Warnock is kind of impeachable. Like they tried. I mean,
unimpeachable, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, unimpeachable. Yeah, geez. How banal. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, he's holding the dog. Yeah.
Well, no, but it's like and also they tried all that stuff. Like he had
over the foot
tape. Like back in the last election, he had there's 911 tape of him with his ex-wife. And then but the problem is you actually listen to it, it's him calling the cops on his ex-wife. And so it's just like it was just like they tried to make that work. And then he had some people, he had some like far left people speak at Martin Luther King's church, which is also, it's like
Cubans.
He's like, and then at the same time, you're like, okay, yeah, great. Kelly Loeffler spoke there. So and Brian Kemp. And like, so you have all these Republicans who also, so like anything they had on him was just, it failed. And also the fact that he's not I mean, I think he's secretly very left. But he is also he's a kind, soft-spoken guy that like, you can't count out the fact that he's good looking, and the fact that he doesn't look like any of the stereotypes that whatever. He looks good in a suit. I mean, like you put all this stuff together, but he also doesn't look like a corporate, he doesn't look like some of the like the corporate people, it's like a lot of the Chicago Democrats or whatever.
The second point I was going to make is
it says the mayor of Chicago in a suit.
It says a lot. Like if you look at Arizona and compare Georgia, right?
Yeah.
These Arizona Republicans, they literally said I had to wait in line for a few hours.
Yeah.
I almost admire it. It's like just dark. You have to have a sense of humor in our politics today. And they literally, Kerry Lake lost, and they are like, yeah, we're getting a real Dominion vibe from this election. We want to redo. They literally are just saying, yeah, we want to redo.
Yeah.
We had to wait in line.
Yeah.
But it says a lot about, like, you have these regular black people in Georgia who just expect it.
Yeah.
And then you have these, like, frankly, these, like, retirees from the Midwest.
Yeah. Well, no, I
who
mean,
are
but
out of
this
their
is-
minds
this
are like,
is-
I had to wait for an hour. We need a redo. It's
This is the sad bit of difference between, you know, like people, especially in a place like Georgia, where it's just like you have the historical, your grandfather probably couldn't vote.
Yeah.
Like you grew up, like certainly some of these people who are like, you know, 30, 40 years old, you know, 40, 50 years old or whatever, your grandfather most certainly couldn't vote. And if he did try to vote, there's a really good chance that, you know, the Klan's going to show up or something like that. And so you have this, you know, they have been, they know what, they know what like real true suppression is like. You know, I mean this is one of the problems with, you know, talking about, it's like, well, you know, they didn't sick dogs on them, they didn't, you know, bring out fire hoses, or you're like, it's not voter suppression. Then it's like, okay, they figured out how to technically do it. So when the fact that, you know, when the fact that, you know, the fact that they, you know, pull you off Twitter, though, for some reason, that's censorship, you know, as opposed to like what they used to have to do is they used to, you know, cops, the FBI would show up at your door and, you know, threaten you. Like, oh yeah, they don't do that anymore, but they just, you know, figure out how to do that. Like, okay, yeah. No, but it's hilarious. The like the fact that the moment that you know, us white people end up having to deal with the same shit that black people deal with in this country is that's when they realize this is terrible, but they for some reason can't pass it off and like you know, you can't do that empathetic thing that normal human beings with, you know, that were raised right. I don't know how else to say it. Like that, like were raised by like not mutants, like the greatest generation. Or anyway, let's get my rant on generations, but that they figure out, oh no, but it's perfectly fine if you do it to somebody else, but no, you did it to me. And that's specifically the current Republican Party, is they can't disconnect they can't disconnect from the idea that this is just affecting them. It's not affecting anybody else. And it affects me, and so it might be affecting somebody. It might be affecting somebody else in a different way. Anyway,
but I gotta be fair, Zach, so I gotta ask you the tough question, which is, we gotta talk about these Leonardo satellites that were switching votes for. Now, what do you know about the satellite from Italy, the Leonardo? Let's get down to it. I know you were.
I gotta say,
they literally were investigating this. Mark Meadows had the Pentagon investigate.
Yeah,
Leonardo.
I am enjoying, as a person who, like, one of the many reasons I got into figured out I wanted to be a journalist is that I really loved a good conspiracy as a kid.
Yeah.
And now I hate them. But like now I don't even enjoy it.
So
Like I read the Warren Commission when I was like 13. I was obsessed with the Kennedy assassination. I had a CD-ROM that you could actually like figure out how, if one shooter could have killed Kennedy. Like, it's a fucking weird
Magic
shit that
bullet.
exists. The magic bullet, whatever. It's so weird. And anyway, but like, so I was like really into it. Now I am not. I don't enjoy any conspiracies. But that said, oh man, the world of Lindell and everything like that, they've really come up with some big ones. And
I'm the chairman of Democrats for Lindell. But we want him to run the RNC. We can't have rhino traitors like Ronna McDaniel. It's got to be Lindell. The base needs to be. But so let's, because you've been so generous. I know you have to run, but I would be really upset with myself if we didn't talk about what's going on now. And you know, we live in such dark times that like the QAnon crazies are like, I like see them and I'm like, thank God. Like I'm like relieved because at least it's not like a neo-Nazi Groyper.
I mean, it's not too much different though. I mean, one of the
Yeah.
problems with any modern conspiracy, like
Yeah.
this is like a podcast idea somebody can steal if they listen to it, but I've wanted to okay, take any conspiracy that exists and see how many steps you need to get until it becomes anti-Semitic.
Protocol.
And like all of them have origins in anti-Semitism. It's like shocking how boring it is.
Okay,
but
like, here's the difference, and this is what I want to. This is what my pinned tweet is about, and this is what sort of like keeps me up at night in a way. The Gen Z right, and like a lot of people who study extremists will say, I hope this is totally wrong. I hope people are like laughing at me, like that was the alarmist. Look at the alarmist. I hope I'm wrong, but the Gen Z right, I really think is different. That's why, like, there's a lot of great writers. Like, I love Jennifer Cohn. Do you know? You know her, right? She does a great job, and she covers the Gen Z people too. But she has a lot of focus on the NAR people, and it's like a lot of boomers and stuff, like preachers and stuff. And I think that's all great, but boomers don't worry me because like boomers think Hitler was bad mostly. The Gen Z right,
he did some bad stuff.
The Gen Z right, I mean, like I remember saying this to myself like, I don't know, 3 months ago, and I was like, oh, that's a ridiculous thing to think. And I was thinking, I bet there's more fervent Hitler supporters among the Gen Z right than Reagan, so like fervent Reagan.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
it's totally true.
The thing is that, I mean, one of the most dangerous things that, like, I'm happy that I caught myself. I mean, thank goodness I wasn't, oh my God, thank goodness I wasn't 20 now. Yeah. Like, I think about, because I was, I grew up Catholic, and so, like, but I also, like, when I turned 18, was going off to college, started, start reading things. And, oh my God, like I thankfully never got into Sam Harris. I just hated his writing so much that I never read it. But Hitchens, like, kind of, I got into, a lot of the new atheists.
I like Hitchens,
and like I started, I still like, I like Hitchens, other than his support for.
He's a complicated guy. Yeah.
His writing is great, and also he also probably part of the reason why I turned into an alcoholic. But there's just something about getting into an argument with a splash of whiskey in it. Anyway, but I was edging towards that like level of like, oh, this is bad. Like, and thank God, because I started noticing when I was making arguments, I would kind of go and just like, I was like, definitely, I mean, like, against all religions and that sort of thing, try to be that, but I was starting to realize that like I was hating on people, on Muslims, and you start realizing that like, wait a minute, like, and especially like once you go to school and like you're introduced to people who are Muslim, like, and I live in my small ass town, my whatever suburban little enclave there. I think there's one person that might have been Muslim. I'm not quite sure. And you start realizing that people are people, they're humans, and that they don't represent thing. But you started realizing that, and just like, and thank God I was raised with if nothing else, a basic level of empathy, and realizing that like, oh God, no. Like the religion is bad, just like Catholic religion is bad. The more orthodox basis of there's bad religions are bad. I think in general, I still stand by that. Just like any cult is not a great idea. Like, and but the moment you start hating on people that believe these things, that's when it becomes really bad. And thank God I was able to pull back from that, because I didn't have a community that was around me that was saying, yeah, that's a good idea. You should hate those people. And I didn't have that because, like, again, thank goodness I had good friends around me who are still liberals. One of my friends from middle school just wrote he's a academic, Dan Berger. I definitely recommend following him. He just wrote a book, State on Freedom. It's so weird. I'm going to review it and interview him later next month. But I was like, thank goodness I was surrounded by like really good people and people that had empathy and people that had care and was like, and would be able to call back and be like, hey man, that doesn't sound good what you just said. Like, and all my friends, you know, check themselves. Like if you may make a joke that you didn't know, you're like, oh, that has this origin, and you're like, oh shit, I'm sorry, and you pull back and you go, okay, you check yourself. But if I didn't have that, if I was on, you know, back then it would have been something awful on those forums. And God, thank goodness I didn't like the internet. I mean, like I was not a fan of I wasn't like an internet person. I didn't know I couldn't figure out how to join the forums and thank goodness I didn't have that. But I mean, it is so fucking easy to be introduced into the most vile shit. Like I think about all the videos that I've seen like on the early days of the internet and early days of social media and things like that, like the number of like beheadings, people burned alive, like all these things that you just click on something and you're like, well, there's no way it can be that bad. And you're like, oh, it's 1,000 times worse. I literally just saw like the things I could just scan through my head when you do anybody who was on the internet and had like a decent internet connection, like what you saw and what you like consumed. And again, thank goodness, again, empathy is the reason I was just like, this is terrible. I don't want to see this. I don't like this. I don't want to see this part of the internet. And so like I pushed away very strongly away from the internet. I was somewhat of a Luddite in college and I actually wrote a small book about about being like my standing up against digital photography and staying with film. But see how that's turned out. But the fact is that it's so easy to be introduced to all this. And like the moment that any of that, first off, like if you don't have anybody in your life that's pushing back on you and you're not surrounded by it, and if you are a loner, you know, if you are just a kid that doesn't, you know, connect with people, whatever, and you don't have people surrounding you, the internet you'll find a place on the internet that people like you will, and whether that be the incel community, whether that be, you know, the groypers, or whether it be, you know, a fandom, you know, whatever. Sometimes hopefully it's just, you know, a cosplaying fandom and they'll bring you in and they're, you know, often good people. Sometimes it'll be whatever ends up like the community that ends up pulling you in. But like people like Nick Fuentes, they know how to pull people in and they know how to talk about it and know how to, like, they won't say, you know, they won't talk about the protocols of Elders of Zion directly. They won't talk about, you know, they'll even mock a lot of the people. I mean, Nick Fuentes just spent a whole lot of time mocking Alex Jones and talking about like these out and out racists that exist and mocking them and saying like how uncool. No, they wouldn't say how uncool it is, but basically how uncool these people are.
Cringe.
And yeah, cringe and things like that. Whatever the kids say these days. I believe that was actually probably my generation that would say cringe, but it's anything old is new again, whatever. But the fact that they know how to do it and they know how to do it so effectively, that's why, like, I think that like one of the most dangerous people on the internet is Nick Fuentes. It's not Alex Jones. It's not you know, even Kanye or whatever. But the fact that like they're right now. The fact that Kanye is able to pull in anybody who's a Kanye fan, you might listen to him on InfoWars, you might listen to him on Tim Pool, wherever else they go. But now you were introduced to Nick Fuentes now, and I'm just like somebody who's very clearly having like a mental break and has a lot of money and being able to just go full out. Is not as dangerous as what it means you're being introduced to Nick Fuentes. You're being introduced to that world. You're being introduced to Milo, and now possibly Ali Alexander is in the mix too, which is his own story. But the fact that you're being introduced to somebody your own age who is smart, who is very well spoken, who knows the lingo, knows the detached irony there's an authenticity to him that doesn't, you know, Alex Jones doesn't really have anymore. Or maybe it never did, I don't know. But the fact that he has all of those things that, like, if he was allowed on TikTok, he would have 1 billion followers. I mean, like, if he was allowed on a lot of these sites, he would have a massive following. on those out fronts, like the mainstream sites. And that's terrifying, because he has this mainstream, I don't know about mainstream, he has this appeal to a large enough of an audience that he's funny. He's like, I've met him several times. I've filmed several of his speeches, and he has that same kind of like weirdness that like we want to listen to him that Donald Trump had, especially early on, not now that he's like kind of even more on, but that is able to pull people in, because he's saying things that, he's saying things that people are thinking. And he's like, yeah, he's saying things that teenagers that have only been introduced to like the terrible parts of the internet, and are also just, teenagers are assholes. Like, we just are. Like, if you're a teenager, my God, I was an asshole when I was a teenager, even though I was very progressive and I was a liberal, you're still a dick. But if you have somebody that's like, no, it's okay. It's okay to have these thoughts. When everyone else around you is going, dude, no, that's super racist. Don't fucking say that. Or you're getting kicked out of your school, or you're being forced to listen to, whatever things that schools might be teaching you about, history that isn't your own. And that's incredibly, incredibly dangerous. And the fact that it's successful, and the fact that these guys are going to they have access to guns, they have, the fact that this is going to very, very quickly peel out into something much, much worse than it is already.
So there's so many different directions I want to go, but you brought up Sam Harris, and I'm really glad I spoke to you, because you've been observing the right for a long enough time. You'll understand this, I bet.
Yeah.
But I make this point with people often. Take a Richard Spencer speech in 2011 or 2012, okay?
Yeah.
Just go find a lecture. The word Jew won't even come up.
Yeah.
The word Auschwitz won't even come. Like, there's a lot of people who just didn't think he was a Nazi. I mean, now we all know. We have the recording, of him shouting,
Yeah.
We all know he's a Nazi now. But back then, like I remember, and this goes way back, and I bet you'll remember this. Do you remember that guy, Jason Richwine?
Jason Richwine, name doesn't sound familiar.
Okay. He was like at AEI, and he went to Harvard, and he was like a policy guy. He was sort of like an immigration restrictionist. Anyways, the alt-right of that early period was so different from, I guess it's not even the alt-right now, but it was so different back like in that period.
Okay. Yeah, he wrote he wrote about IQ and immigration policy and things like that. Yeah.
And he wrote an article for AlternativeRight.com. I remember that. He's Jewish.
Yeah.
And I don't think, and they did not like, I'm sure there were some comments that were like using slurs about him, but it was like, yeah. And then you fast forward to like 2015, now they're doing gas chamber memes.
Yeah.
And now you get to Nick Fuentes, where he's literally got a shit-eating grin as he threatens violent pogroms. You better be nice to me, because if you aren't, things can go to 0 to 60 pretty fast.
Yeah. And
we all know that's a violent threat.
Yeah.
So that is what is so alarming, is this acceleration.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what your thoughts on what is driving it. I have different theories, but I'm sort of intrigued by this theory that we're looking at sort of like almost an addiction crisis, where as consumers, it's like a drug. Conspiracy. Yeah. Okay, 9/11, JFK. Okay, I know that. Been there, done that. I need some harder stuff. Okay, let's get Rothschilds. Let's go reptilians.
Yeah. Well, one thing with any conspiracy, I wouldn't say any. I think that like one thing with like the JFK assassination like theory like thing is that the kind of the more old school like broader conspiracies, there's always been anti-Semitic theories, conspiracy theories, there's always been racist conspiracy theories, there's always been these kind of QAnon type of things, but they're not as broad. They never had the, I don't think, the widespread kind of belief that they have now, and certainly not people acting out in it. People like quietly had like, you know, their Ron Paul newsletter, or had their John Birch Society thing or whatever. They, you know, most people probably didn't have it like weren't going out in the street and holding up signs like they do often now. But one of the things that modern conspiracy theories seem to do that kind of some of the older ones do is that they put you at the center of the world. Like, to me, like one of the things that interested me about the JFK assassination was that you were in this broader community and that you were one of the many people kind of like talking about it, investigating it. It wasn't centered. The modern conspiracy theories really center you, and that you are the person that can save the world. You're the only person who has this vital info that can save American democracy or save the children and save the things. And maybe I'm kind of naive about it. I've been called out on being naive about the JFK assassination conspiracy theory. I don't know, but and certainly happy to be proven wrong on that. But I think that that's something that's changed in the way that we kind of talk about and have conspiracy theories and that we used to, and the fact that like, because people have, I think, have really come to the conclusion that American capitalistic life is terrible. And the fact that we've kind of all like been like, okay, unless you can find your kind of niche or the thing that you do, whatever, that life really sucks. And the fact that you come to this realization that life, you're never going to be the center. You're never going to be on stage. You're never going to be beloved by everybody. And the fact that social media comes about at the same time as all of this kind of realization, going, well, the American dream kind of sucks. Like, it's American dream for like 12 people, and then kind of everybody else is kind of like, we're all just kind of dealing with the scraps.
And you have 4 roommates.
Yeah.
And saying,
I'm 35 years old and I have 4 roommates, and like,
and the most generous take, and I'm not generous to these people.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say this, but like, if you wanted to be generous, you'd say these people are like, I like Hitler. It's a way of saying I hate this world. Like, I don't like this.
I think
that's the fundamental thing. I mean, they want to kill people, so I don't give a fuck what their cause is.
So edgy humor has always, like, being edgy has always been a great way of like putting yourself out there, and like Ben like being on the forefront. The problem is that when there's a million people online, like if Lenny Bruce was around today, he'd be the most boring person on 4chan. You know, I mean, you're saying these words, who cares? And so, and like, God, I don't want to even think about like Lenny Bruce or Bill Hicks being alive in this age and where they would probably go. They'd probably be up on stage with Dave Chappelle, but which terrifies me as a person who has a Bill Hicks tattoo on my hand or on my wrist. It's like, I don't want to think about that. But when edginess becomes like the big thing that you want to be, and you just keep pushing yourself, and everyone else keeps pushing you, because it's the only way that you can make this grift called social media work, is that then this is how accelerationism happens, because of social media and because of like just people being constantly online, like myself, but is the fact that you constantly keep getting pushed forward to be more and more and more. And the fact that like somebody like Nick Fuentes was already out there. I mean, he was out there in 2017. He was out where people are now back then, like in the way that he talks and the way that he's like the snide little laugh and everything that he has, being smarter than everybody else. And he does it way more effectively than anyone else is that's trying to do it now. And God, I keep giving.
Well, but here's the good. Let me give you some. Let me lift you up a little bit.
Yeah.
When Nick Fuentes had Marjorie Taylor Greene come to AFPAC 3, and he did his little praising Hitler on stage, and he laughed and he pretended it was just a joke. He went out and gave interviews. I was just joking. I was just joking, you know, edgy humor. The one beautiful silver lining of the Kanye thing is Kanye doesn't do dog whistles.
Yeah.
So Nick Fuentes is now defined. The way I hope people talk about him is
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Is he's the I like Hitler guy. And now he's just openly saying it. I was on those spaces. But let's end with this.
Yeah.
Do you notice this is what I'm seeing? It seems like the far right it's like they came to a fork in the road, and one direction was racism and the other's direction was anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And they've gone the anti-Semitism route, and that's not to say they aren't racist. They're still totally racist. But I think they have sort of gotten behind the Fuentes strategy of we're going to create a multicultural anti-Semitism. And basically his life goal is like he's an aspiring pogrom leader, and he's okay having a few brown faces when they burn down the synagogue.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that too?
Oh yeah, I mean when I filmed him making his very terrifying speech at the first Million MAGA March in November of 2020, he made it very clear there was one or two African American kids that were there, and he made sure to point out that they were there. I mean, this is the same thing. This is the same ploy that the Proud Boys have always done. I mean, the Proud Boys are a little. I don't think Nick, like most of Nick's talk is more focused on a kind of Catholic fascism that he wants than talking about a white nationalist state. Exactly. He certainly talks about it a lot. Like let's not deny that.
Yeah.
But he doesn't talk about it. He basically, it's like, no, we should be the ones that are in control. He doesn't say that they shouldn't exist and shouldn't be in the state. It's not like a Richard Spencer more, which is like that kind of world where it's just like there isn't a place for them in our society. It's like there is a place for them in our society. It's below us. And that's what more along the lines of what that kind of world believes, which I think is potentially more dangerous because it's more palatable which is terrifying that it's palatable to anybody, but it's more palatable to a certain group of people, and also like it's potentially like a more palatable to people of color who are like trying to find a place in life, and it's very sad that that's the place that they find. People like that they get to be the number one person in a white nationalist society.
And so we're entering into 2024 land. The midterms are over. Do you have a read on the situation? Do you think DeSantis is going to be able to challenge Trump? What are your thoughts on what's coming up next?
Anybody who makes a prediction needs to have their head checked. I mean, Donald Trump is the presumptive nominee at this moment. If something happens to Trump, whether it be criminal or whether it be health or whether it be he just decides he's bored by things, then it's probably going to be DeSantis. I think if it's DeSantis becomes like the number one choice, then it becomes a little bit more of a fair game, because if it's not Trump, then even though DeSantis is, MAGA light, even though he's actually been the more effective version of Donald Trump in his state, then people like Brian Kemp or Governor Youngkin here in Virginia become possible choices as well. I'm not 100% sure that Brian Kemp really wants to run, but he has already been bandied out about by the New York Times, by the Wall Street Journal, and USA Today as potential, like, the successor, as the kind of like, the Republican Party becomes more reasonable somehow, even though I don't know who sees the Republican Party becoming more reasonable. I see them only becoming more effective at their strategy especially as they take over Congress and they can start, building more and more conspiracies around whether it be Hunter Biden's laptop or whether it be whatever elections and crap like that. And so, but yeah, no, I mean, I think if Donald Trump wins the nomination, I find it difficult for him to lose against Joe Biden if Joe Biden is the nominee as well.
You think Trump would win?
I absolutely think he would win.
Oh, wow.
I mean, he would have won if he didn't go on his insane rants about mail-in voting. He would have won in 2020. I have zero doubt about that at all. If he didn't tell people, no, you have to show up on this day, not vote, don't even vote early, vote on the only election day, and then wait in long lines. There may be inclement weather, there may be other things. I think he would have won. I think he would have won in Georgia. I think there's a really good chance he would have won in Pennsylvania. I think he would have won.
You don't think?
Yeah, go ahead.
You don't think there's like a significant millions that voted for him in the last election that saw January 6th and might be turned off by that?
By now,
Yeah.
I mean, record numbers of people voted for him in 2020. More people voted for him in 2020 after hundreds of thousands of people died during the pandemic, and saw how he did all of that, saw him put kids in cages, saw him ban an entire religion from the country. And we're like, we want more of that. And we want it more so. And so the fact that like more people voted for that, I mean, I don't know where I was actually genuinely surprised at the pure number of people that voted in that election. But again, mail-in balloting is now all but impossible in the state of Georgia. And that's going to probably spread against any state that has a Republican legislature. It's going to be more tough to vote by mail. Already a lot of states have already started pushing for that. They've certainly at least gone back from like how it was to vote in, say, 2016. They certainly pulled back all of those things that during the pandemic. They're not sending ballots to people, which is why people voted. This is like it's the easiest thing to, as Barack Obama said, just vote. It's the easiest thing to do. In 2020, it was the easiest thing to do. They literally sent you ballots in a lot of states that you just had to fill out and then put back in the mail. And so if they don't do that, then Democrats, the voter suppression that Republicans have been so effective at doing in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and in Arizona will end up affecting the national vote again.
Worst comes to worst, we can just deploy the Leonardo satellite. No, but I think you're making a good point that I think, there's those betting markets, and I get it is sort of sick to bet on politics, but I would be shorting DeSantis. I think people are way ahead of themselves on him. Did you see the thing today where he did his big anti-vax?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen it, but I know
he just cannot shut up about COVID, and it's like I think even a lot of Republicans are sort of tired of talking about it. It's.
I mean, the thing is that he is the main candidate who's going to get from the moment that Trump really starts, like in say in 6 months or something or whatever. I assume it'll probably be shorter than that, but in 6 months, Donald Trump starts really campaigning. Again, assuming he does. I think there's obviously always a lot of assumptions about Trump's because Trump doesn't have any trajectory here. Like he can lay back and kind of be the nominee that everybody has to kind of fight around and doesn't have to do anything because he's literally going to be preventing people from, now that he's said that he's running, but the moment he starts running, he's going to start attacking DeSantis because I mean he's running against people who dare to say anything bad against him. He's going to attack DeSantis probably more than he's going to attack Joe Biden because he knows that that's his only competition in getting the nomination. And Trump only cares about things, I think saying only 3 months ahead of him is generous. I think it's,
I mean, my general thing, like you said, predictions are crazy these days. I don't think we know anything till the first debate. That because, but what's sort of interesting, and I wonder if you've thought about this, is I really wonder if Trump is gonna, because everyone knows the first debate is gonna be like 90 million viewers, like I wonder if he's gonna be like auctioning it, like like you have to pay me, and because they probably would pay him.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think that like all of is there a handful of people in the party leadership? Would McCarthy and oh my God, I'm blanking on Turtle Boy's name.
McConnell. First Turtle American to be the speaker.
Yeah. Would they care? Would they rather not have Donald Trump running? I would probably say fuck yes. They would rather not have him. They want somebody they can control. But the problem is that can they control DeSantis? No. I don't think that the Republican Party has any more control over DeSantis than they do under Trump. Maybe somebody like Brian Kemp or Youngkin, they have more control. But I mean, I think they're going to want somebody who is able to fall in line a little bit more and kind of vote for what traditional Republican. They're going to want somebody who can actually run and help the down ticket. And I don't know if Trump helps the down ticket in a presidential race, but does he care? I don't think so. Does DeSantis? I don't think so either. I'm very curious on whether or not he does really well. DeSantis gets the biggest cheers ever outside of maybe Donald Trump at CPAC and things like that. But does he do well in his abrasive kind of cocky attitude that he has? If you ever listen to a press conference or anything like that, I mean, he comes off more as a dick than Donald Trump does. And that's
not funny. He's not funny.
He doesn't have the Trump like improvisational. He doesn't have the ability to read a crowd and kind of like go. He also is not a famous billionaire. I mean, like let's be honest here. Like Donald Trump still has the fact that he's a famous billionaire, has been one for 30 years. I grew up with Donald Trump being a figure, like a figure in my figure in influence. My stepfather had the Trump game, was a big fan of him. I mean, things like that. Like, and so this idea that somebody can just come along immediately without, like, if Donald Trump had been quiet about DeSantis and then had basically turned around and said, or will turn around and say, I anoint DeSantis as my successor because I'm tired, or just I don't want to do this.
I hate to say it because I think a second Trump administration would obviously be a total,
the end of America.
A total nightmare. How many Groyper Nazis would be in the just roaming around? I mean, we already had some with Garrett Ziegler in the first, but it would probably be Kai Clips would be.
I mean, the most terrifying thing about whether it be a DeSantis or whether it be a second Trump administration is the fact that they'd actually learn how to be effective, and that they wouldn't put those people in there, and that you'd get more people like Stephen Miller, who is I dare to say, he's at least vaguely intelligent and knows how to be cruel and be effective, as opposed to just complete idiots that run most of the Trump administration beforehand, and who basically the only way they were able to ever get anything done was just by the pure power of the presidency. So, I mean,
what I was going to say is, I hate to say it, but a lot of the pro-Trump people, who are, they actually still have sort of a strong case. Like, you can make a strong case that actually, as flawed as, after January 6th, that Trump still would be better than the traditional Republicans, because they couldn't. I mean, Romney couldn't win Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin. That's sort of traditional conservatism, classic. The Romney campaign in a lot of ways was the perfect encapsulation of the failure of that party, because that whole campaign was I'm a rich guy. It was remember, it was He was like a big victimhood campaign for entrepreneurs. Remember
Yeah,
that?
yeah. No, I mean, look, if there's enough people who, I mean, one of the biggest things, I mean, the United head of the United, not Tom King, the head of the United Auto Works was,
Richard,
um,
or no, wrong.
that's Trump. Yeah, no, you're gonna Trump because it's different. But he actually credited my journalism and Greg Palast journalism for winning Ohio, which was the state where it's just like it actually that's where it happened. Is because of, I mean, he was behind, Mitt Romney was behind the failure of the auto bailout. Not only did he make an incredible sum of money through the billionaire vulture capitalist Paul Singer, but he said, let it fail, like fuck Detroit, and so like a lot of people will probably say F Detroit, but that meant that 25,000 union auto working jobs went over to China. That was part of the deal. That's why a lot of people that, he was a pro NAFTA Republican. And not just pro NAFTA, but like very adamantly, like we're gonna, basically F the little man. If you didn't make it, then you don't have value. And so, people either didn't vote or said, okay, well, I have two choices. What I'm going to vote. I'm going to vote for Barack Obama, who at least tried with the auto bailouts, even if it was a moderate failure. And so they figured, I don't know, they didn't figure out, because the Republican Party had nothing to do with Donald Trump winning. Yeah. The only people that had to do with that was his fans and Trump basically falling into it, because all of the other candidates that they ran against him were terrible. I mean, Jeb Bush was. Oh, yeah. It was hard not to like go. Trump is right about Jeb Bush.
I so vividly remember those 2016 debates, because me and my friends watched all of them. But when China would come up and Trump, aka Tariff Man, would be like, "They're ruining us, and they've done nothing. We gotta, I want the tariffs." And then like Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio in their like dorky like Cato, like heritage think tank intern voice would be like, "Actually, tariffs are a tax on," and Trump would be like, "Just shut up."
Yeah.
Like, but this sort of gets to like a bigger question, and it's so difficult. Like, I don't expect anybody to have the answers, which is part of why Trump arose was because the zombie, whatever they call it, zombie Reaganism, that model was dead.
Yeah.
And so like I have a big problem when I hear like a lot of never Trumpers like at the Lincoln Project say, they sort of imply a lot of time like, well, they don't even care about tax cuts anymore. And like as bad as this party is, like Bush was terrible too. I mean, not as threatening, but I know what you're saying. We don't need a strong Republican Party, but we just need them to not want to kill people. Like, I don't.
Yeah, I mean, my argument is the fact that like the quote unquote strong Republican Party still always wanted to kill people. They just wanted to do it through
Social Security
bipartisan legislation. Yeah, and so like they killed tens of thousands of people that way. They didn't kill them through literally sometimes killing them, like having the state do it. And so, I mean, it's yes, it would be very helpful to have. I mean, the biggest thing is it'd be helpful to have an opposing party from to the Democrats that actually wanted to participate in government. But you haven't had that since before Trump. I mean, Mitch McConnell came out and says that we're not going to work with the Republican. Mm-hmm. We're not going to work with the Democrats. And so this idea that there is a political party to be had that within the remnants or the waste of the Republican Party after Trump leaves it, it's not there. And it's going to be minimum of a generation before that changes, because now you have people who you have tons and tons. You have Marjorie Taylor Greene, who will never lose that seat. There is no way she's never going to lose that seat. She's not going to lose it against somebody primarying her, and she's not going to lose it against a Democrat. So unless redistricting or something like that ends up affecting
Maybe
her,
a sex scandal.
I don't think so. I mean, she's had scandals. I mean, she's had all the scandals that normally would have destroyed it. And so you have, I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene's the most obvious, but like you have all of these other Jan 6 Congress people who are out there who are thanks to redistricting and everything, and thanks to gerrymandering, will never lose their seat. And then you have a whole bunch of like seen as senators that are Rand Paul is never going to lose his seat. There's nobody that's going to run against him because now they've been established for at least 2 terms. I mean, it's very difficult after. I mean, it's almost impossible to kick somebody, an incumbent, out of a House or Senate seat. But after they've had like 2 or 3 terms, the only thing you can do is go farther right to win because of the Republican primary system. And I mean, Democratic primary system is, like I think I said before, it was like just the exact opposite, where it's just like, no, we have to have the most milquetoast centrist guy, and so we can only run. We only gonna run people who we imagine will somehow win in the general, even though that doesn't end up happening, because then you get you lose just as many Democrats who are excited about voting for somebody who's a progressive than you ever imagine that you're going to win centrists, because centrists don't fucking exist anymore.
Don't get me started on the Democrats. Like, I'll just say this, like, whatever happened to universal health care? Like, I can't stand this Obamacare, complex, private. Yeah, I'm literally like a political junkie. Yeah. And I don't understand these exchanges and all that. I mean, it's like we still have like the Club Q survivors are starting GoFundMe's in their hospital beds. This is shameful. Yep. But and everybody's just like, the big red. I don't want to go on a rant, but the big red flag is when you hear Democrats talking about access and affordability.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, access is. Yeah. I've got access to healthcare right now. Like, I mean, I theoretically have had health insurance this entire past year. Have I been able to use it in any way other than to get something that was already prescribed to me? That's it. That's the only way I've been able to use my health insurance. I still haven't been able to find a doctor, like in this area that actually is taking patients. So, do I have health insurance? I guess so. I guess if I get into a car accident, knock on wood, that like at least I won't go completely and utterly bankrupt. I'll just go small time bankrupt.
We should call this healthcare system the GoFundMe healthcare system. Yeah. But that's a whole other thing. But so I think what you're getting at is, and I can't decide if it's a blessing or a curse, and I want to see what you think. The GOP just is so. There is no policies. I mean, like, they have literally not had a healthcare policy in, I don't know, when was ever? I mean, 10 years? It's amazing. They don't have a healthcare policy.
Well, no, I mean, they did. And that was, if you remember, how the ACA was Romney care.
Yeah.
I mean, this is how crazy, this is how far right, and this is the Overton window has shifted so much, is that Barack Obama brought us into the centrist world where we're accepting, again, I mean, to blame Barack Obama on this is a little bit, I mean, freaking Bill Clinton banned, made gay marriage, made marriage equality illegal, and then also gave us NAFTA, which was the thing that the Republican Party would have dreamed of. And he did it literally just so he could have some legislative thing that he could run on for the second term. Yeah. And I mean, that's the exact same thing that Democrats had a choice of what they could do to use their political capital. And they decided ACA was the thing that was going to do. And look I didn't have health insurance before at all. I was, just out there in the world and hoping. And now I have health insurance because Medicaid expansion and everything like that happened. Yeah. And so cool. But the fact that when you run on universal health care, you run on that and saying that you're supportive of it, and then when you choose the people that are allowed into the room to make the deal, and you don't even let people who believe that in the room, then we tell you we know what your ideals are. That's exactly, you were lying to us the entire time, because at least fight for it. I mean, that's the thing that the Democratic Party has come to, is the fact that we fight for what we think we'll get in the end, and then the Republicans go, okay, well, that's where you're going to start the deal, and then we'll compromise more. And so it's like, if you want $20, you go in, walk into a door with a deal. If you want $20 to buy something, and you're like, okay, this guy's gonna, whittle me down. So I go, okay, I want $40 for this, and the guy goes, oh, I can't give you more than 10. You go, okay, 25, and you work your way down, and then you get 20, and then supposedly both sides are happy. The Republicans know that the Democrats will walk in the room and go, I want 15 for this.
Well, the funny thing is, they did that extraordinary polling where they polled Republicans with like Elizabeth Warren's policies.
Yeah.
And it was 70%.
Yeah.
Is they don't even hate universal health care, really. I mean, they hate the idea that black people and people they don't like would get it.
That's the problem, though.
That's the big rub
is
for
that
them.
They want Medicare, they want Medicaid, but they only want it. Well, I don't know if a lot of Republicans want Medicaid unless it's for them personally, but they want Medicare, and they want this famous protest sign, government hands off of my Medicaid or Medicare, and I mean, you hear people argue that. Like, I've talked to people who actually was like, well, I don't want government involvement in my healthcare. And I'm like, ma'am, don't you have Medicare? It's like, yes. I'm like, what do you think that Medicare is? But I mean, again, that's the problem is that they see quote unquote lazy black people wanting to get health insurance without having to work. And so we'll never have universal health care.
That's why they always say, we're not Sweden.
Yeah.
You ever notice that?
Yeah.
They're like, well, we're not Sweden. I'm like, well, what does that mean? But
they mean we're not a white nationalist state.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, one of the problems that anytime we have these arguments was like, well, they don't have this, anyway, but it's.
Yeah. So to his larger point about the right. So one thing that sort of astonishes me, and it's like, maybe it's a good thing or a bad thing, is let's look at the Groypers, okay?
Yeah.
So what don't they like? They don't like immigration. They don't like whites becoming a minority. I always say that is like the number one core that unites the entire smorgasbord, right?
Yeah.
Yet it's not like they have like a bill to like cut immigration that they're all getting behind. They don't care at all about bills. And they're much more interested in like posting gas chamber memes. It's like for the far right, Hitler and the Nazis, it's like moths to flame.
Yeah.
Like they cannot help themselves. Do you have any reflections on, like, I literally think it's like too much effort for them to like, here's a bill and we want this bill passed to cut immigration. It's like, they're just sort of like, fuck all that. I want to be a Nazi.
Yeah, well, I mean, the biggest thing that all of this comes down to is that the only thing that they got going for them is owning the libs. They've just been saying, like, this is, I forget who, I wish I could remember who actually like pointed this out, and I was just like, you're 100% correct, is that this is the only thing that the Republican Party has and that conservatives in this country have either. The only reason that they suddenly care about anything. You could say that if you could convince half of this country that bacon was a favorite thing that liberals eat every single morning as part of their breakfast, and that they enjoy it, and that it's part of why they love this country, suddenly middle America would start hating bacon. Like, it is just anything you can possibly think of. That's all you have to do is convince somebody that liberals like a thing, and immediately it becomes, well, we gotta stop that. And that's the problem. Like, how do you fight that? Like, I don't know how you actually work against that as a political party or organizing or anything like that is that you can't bring over people, because the moment that you say, hey, look at this is something we can come together and believe on, they go, wait, you like that thing? We hate it. And it doesn't matter what it is. It could be literally anything. Fresh air. I mean, I still remember being at a CPAC meeting in 2017 and like literally they're going, well, we got clean air. We don't need the Clean Air Act anymore. And it's just like, what? Like the idea of doing anything that the libs did to begin with, even if you go, hey, Ronald Reagan supported that, doesn't matter. Bill Clinton used to did as well. Like, and that's why you can't have the Voting Rights Act anymore, is because.
Do you remember those videos after Clinton lost of these conservatives made these videos of compilations of the Hillary supporters crying?
Yeah.
I mean, that they loved that video, those videos so much. I mean, like
I'm sure that they watch them and watch them quietly in the bathroom.
Their happy place.
I mean, like this is what they want. This is all that they care about. I mean, like I wish that we could, as like, if we had any sort of like organizational ability on the left, is the one thing that we should do is convince them that there's nothing we hate more than a well-funded welfare state. Try to do that. We just do that.
Universal health care is super racist.
You know what I hate? I hate poor people getting money hands out. Well, wait a minute. That actually happened. What are you talking about? Donald Trump handed out more money to people, more money to more people. And like that was perfectly fine. But the moment that, I mean, never mind, you didn't have to have the right say it, but we elected Joe Biden, and then Joe Biden immediately ended all of that. He's like, pandemic's over, guys. You all got to get back to work. Never mind the fact that nothing changed and that the largest number of people that died was under Joe Biden, because of the buildup of hospitals and everything like that. But it's just like, it wasn't Joe Biden's fault, but it was also, he didn't help it by the fact that he cut off unemployment for everyone. And so, like, as somebody who was on unemployment, and I went from having something I can actually live on to having, I think I was like $14 or something like that.
Wow.
That they figured out that I should be getting each week. It's I don't know how we can do it though. This is a problem, because everyone always asks me that at the end of an interview. It's like, well, where do we go from here? How do we do this? And I go, I don't know. We have to have a country that's willing to listen to things. We don't have that, because every single time I post something about the far right or whatever, it's like, can we just move on from this? Charlottesville was 5 years ago.
It's over.
Just Donald Trump. Let's ignore Donald Trump. Just block him when he comes in. And it's just like, well, that's really great. You guys tried that before. You guys tried ignoring the far right before, and then we got the Unite the Right rally, and people died. And then you tried to ignore Donald Trump and mock him and laugh at the fact that he was ever going to win. And you notice, I mean, there's this famous CNN clip, which I would, if I ever got into a fight with somebody, I could use a metaphysical thing, like not actually a club, but if I ever got into a fight with the Democratic Party and I could pick up that clip from CNN, it was a roundtable of, wasn't Meet the I don't think it was Meet the Press, but it was whatever the thing is. And it was Keith Ellison, it was Maggie Halpern.
Oh yeah.
And two other people. And whoever was the announcer, I don't think it was
King, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. And he says, well, what do you think about Donald Trump? And everybody started laughing. Wow. The only black person at the round table was like, he wasn't laughing. Yeah. And that's why I love Keith Ellison. Like, I've met Keith Ellison a couple times, talked to him. He's a whatever. He's still party apparatchik, whatever, but he's still a good guy. I think he knows at least his stuff. And it's the fact that he just was dead straight. He's like, I think he can win, and it's the fact that he knew, because he's black, literally because he's black and he's from Minnesota.
So I think I've been thinking a lot about how does this sort of Groyper Fuentes, this far right Gen Z thing, how does this play out? Can it just keep getting more and more extreme? Does it could like enough? Is it going to be like they try to nominate these people and they get crushed and that snaps, that they start to realize like, hey, maybe the gas chamber memes were fun, guys, but maybe there's not a future in that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean,
one of the problems, if we're specifically talking about like Nick Fuentes as opposed to like all the far right, is the fact that I think he's been at the back watching how everything has played out. He's watched how Proud Boys have worked out. He's watched how, all these different groups, the militia groups have worked out. And he's quiet. He knows that all you do is you just kind of wait and like grow your base. And, I keep hoping that there's some chance that like this whole Kanye insanity is going to like be the thing that causes his bubble to burst. And the fact that he'll just kind of like deflate back to a thing, but it doesn't seem to be doing anything. And the fact that he seems to quietly being like, somebody wants to pop up and he says the quiet part loud. And then they cut back to Kanye because Kanye can't have, attention anywhere else other than him. And so what worries me is that it just kind of like it has for the last, since, maybe we had like 6 months after after January 6th that we had this, but we have this idea now is that the best idea is again to ignore them and to just not do anything. Let Merrick Garland, he knows what he's doing. Trust the plan, and like keep moving forward, and we're gonna do great. And well, that's not working out great. Is that even though the Democrats once again think that they did well in 2000, I have this phrase that I always say, and it's always focused at liberals, and it's like, just because you didn't lose doesn't mean you won. Just because that Supreme Court case, didn't overturn the thing that you want, doesn't mean you won. You didn't lose, which is good. It's good not to lose, but the fact that it got that far is a bad thing. And the fact that there's no turn away. There's no turning. What this country hasn't, since I've been voting in 1999 on, like since I've been voting, there's no moment where we got to the precipice of of terrible and turned back and went for good. We've never done that. I think 2008 maybe could have been that moment where we, had we could have gone to John McCain, had basically another George Bush type person, continue the war machine, continue everything. And then we elected Barack Obama, we all celebrated. And then Barack Obama changed up the way that we do things. And he just used drone attacks to murder 15-year-old kids in the desert. And so I don't know I never know, like, again, I never know how to answer this question, like in a positive sense, in the fact that like, we always just want to turn away and go, we won, we can go back home again. And, somebody who's worked on voting rights and covered voter suppression for, oh my God, way too long now, for over 15 years, is the fact that every single time I see this, people really care about it. Like our email, like Greg Palast and my email lists go really up. People care about it. People pay attention in November. Then January rolls around and those email lists just go away because they don't want to hear about it anymore. And it's just like, well, the only reason you have to care about it so intensely for 3 months before the election, but when it's already too late to do anything, is because you didn't pay attention to it a year ahead of time. I mean, there are states right now that are trying to pass laws like Georgia's SB 202 across this country. They're trying to do that, and they're doing it. They're effectively doing it. And so because everyone's not paying attention to it. And the fact that you're not going to have, if Pennsylvania, if let's say Wisconsin does it, you're not going to have the World Series, the Major League Baseball, cancel the series in Wisconsin because, well, it's never going to happen there, so it's not going to happen. But you're never going to have that big amount of give a damn because we're not paying attention to it.
And we just don't have local and state journalists, which is an absolute crisis because of the amount of corruption. That's a whole nother thing.
Well, I mean, one of the bigger problems too is that you have in Georgia is that you have one big newspaper. You have the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and they do what, if it was a cop, I call it propaganda, is that they do basically press release journalism for Brian Kemp and Brad Raffensperger, and that's something that they do. That you have all this thing. You have state and House reporters who are, I'll give them credit and say they're overworked and they're, underpaid and understaffed. And so the best thing that they can do is just churn copy out of saying, here's what Brian Kemp said. Here's what it is. no fact check, no nothing, no asking other people what they think about his saying. Maybe they'll ask Stacey Abrams for a response, or maybe they'll do whatever, but they'll never actually go, well, here's what actually the facts are. Here's what the voting turnout and election thing. Because I mean, like literally, you have Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State in Georgia, crowing about the fact that you had record turnout. Except you look at the record turnout, and it went down 75% from the last election, and it's just like. But yeah, if you compare it to a previous election that isn't really comparable, yeah, sure, 2018 is not comparable to 2022 because you don't have the stakes and you don't have the attention. Also, you don't have SB 202. You don't have the voter suppression law. Thing.
I will say about local journalists, Chicago mainstream media has the polar plunge coverage around the clock. I mean, you'll get 12 stories. Or they're at the annual dog walk and they want to interview I got a little pit bull named Lucas here. How you doing, Lucas? Yeah, they got that covered. So to end, I want you to pitch this really interesting doc you just finished up on. Tell us how we can support you, your journalism, and the movie.
Well, just released. Well, actually, we've just not released it. So we're looking for. We're trying to shop it to like.
What's
Netflix.
It called? What's it called?
It's called Vigilante: Georgia's Vote Suppression Hitman. It is produced by Martin Sheen. President Bartlett.
Oh wow.
It is produced by George DiCaprio. Yes, that DiCaprio. And has an intro by Martin Sheen. It's actually narrated by Rosario Dawson. You'll recognize her voice. She's awesome. She's been one of the greatest fighters for in celebrity world, fighters for voting rights. Crazy. Voto Latino is a great group. But yeah, no. If you go to gregpalast.com, sign up for Greg's newsletter. You can go to visu.news, visu.news, and sign up for my post there. I'm on Substack as visu.news as well. And patreon.com /ZD Roberts. Everything else on social media is ZD Roberts. But the biggest thing is like, sign up to stay informed. You don't have to, be great. If you want to donate, for my Patreon, that would be absolutely fantastic. I don't do that much that's like Patreon exclusive, just because if I cover something, usually it's something I feel really bad about hiding behind a paywall. I'm going to try to get into a little bit more. I'm going to start working on a kind of a 6-part series or something on the history of modern vote suppression. Wow. Yeah, that's my goal. That will probably be like a Patreon exclusive type thing. But I'm trying to try to get it to an actual home, not just my Patreon, because it's going to be really extensive and really long.
And people can hire you, right? If they're looking for a great.
I mean, Al, if you need a second shooter for a wedding, I do those too. But yeah, it's actually 100% true. You can do that. I live in Norfolk, Virginia. If you need a photographer, whether that be covering for news or videographer as well, I am most certainly for hire.
And now, gear talk.
I'm just curious. Let's just talk gear for a second. What's your camera these days?
I shoot with the 2 Nikon Z6s. Very lenses, whatever is not broken at the moment. my gear gets broken a lot. Just that's literally it. I have a really good Rode shotgun mic that's on my camera, and I barely ever do sit down interviews that I have to laugh somebody. So that's kind of it. It shoots 4K. It's not RAW or anything like that like Sony's are. But they work really well. I love the color that comes out of them right out of the camera, so I don't have to do editing. But yeah, I'm probably switching to this Sony pretty soon. Unfortunately, Nikon is just kind of refusing to recognize where the world is going and everything, and actually come out with a proper video, a video focused mirrorless. And so it'll probably be the Sony FX3, which is their crop censored cinema camera. And I'll probably switch to whatever. I don't even know I can't figure out the Sony's numbering system. So it'll be, I'll ask somebody that I know a couple people at Sony, and I'll just be like, what camera do I need to buy? Yeah. Yeah, I mean the Nikons aren't exactly
6011.
consistent, but at least I'm like, there's a Z6, there's a Z7, there's a Z6 II, and a Z7 II, and now there's a Z5, which is kind of a weird thing. But yeah, anyway.
What's the battery? You know, I love my camera, but somebody warned me, and I stupidly didn't listen. I have a Blackmagic Pocket 4K.
Yeah,
and it's a great camera. It looks great. But the battery life is a nightmare. So I definitely could not do what you did. How's the battery on the?
I carried 9 batteries with me.
Okay, 9. Okay, so like in like 2 hours,
4K,
how many?
I mean, if it's just 1080p, battery life is perfect, is okay. But the problem is that like the mirror, like I need to have my cameras on as much as possible so I don't, have the turn it on and then take a photo. So and also I'm still like I learned photography on film and then switched into digital, and so I've had a DSLRs, mirrored cameras up until 3 years ago. And so I'm still like, oh, why do you need to turn off the camera? The batteries last forever. Like they're fine. And so I blow through batteries like left and right. But if you're shooting 4K, it just murders them. It just goes through batteries like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, I mean we have this crisis. I bet you'll understand this. Of the 4K is so large. Mm-hmm. I mean, how many hard drives do you?
This is the one thing that I do actually genuinely like about the Nikons. The 4K is not. It's pretty well compressed, and like I say, like it stands up next to like, because we have our film Vigilante, and I'd say 10 maybe 15% of the footage is shot with my Nikons, and the rest is shot with like $7,000 pro, like the pro Sony like level video cameras. I can't tell the difference. And obviously, like, my editor and director is he does really great color and everything like that on it, but like I can't even tell the difference. The only thing I can tell the difference is I'm like, I know I shot that with a cell phone. Like there's a couple scenes in it that I shot with a cell phone, and I'm just like, I can tell. I don't know if anybody else can tell though either. And it's just like, that's really sad. But
I'm such an amateur. I don't know if you know, like the Blackmagic, they have like their own sort of format called B-RAW.
Yeah.
And it's takes up so much space.
Yeah,
but,
I mean that's the thing. They don't shoot raw, so.
But the good thing for me as an amateur, I like it because you can go and change the ISO and like change all the stuff later. And it's like, I'm such a amateur. Like I'm gonna mess this stuff up.
Oh no, I mean, I mean, there's just a lot of things that you don't notice. I mean, I remember thank goodness for Premiere's like raw editing that they have now, which is insane. There's a couple interviews I've done where you get back out and you didn't notice the fact that there was a halogen or a fluorescent light bulb that was going out, and so you get the rolling thing, and I was just like, oh my god, this is destroyed. I had it in black. I had to throw it in black and white, and it was just like, I'm whatever. It's like a weird. It makes it look like a weird artistic choice. And then I went back through and I'm like, oh my god, I just like moved a little lever, and I'm like, oh. And so believe me, that's another thing is that like it would be really there's some things that would be really nice to be able to bring out a little bit more, but man, the memory cards for that, because it's not SD cards, it's QXD cards for the Nikons, which I also think is a really bad choice as well, because they're like the bad version of a combo of a cheap SD card and a compact flash card. It's just a terrible card system. But
I've never been able to do cards because the files are so large. I just have to.
Oh, you have like
a
solid state drive.
Samsung, the blue, what's it called? T1.
Yeah,
I love those things. But what do you do on steadying? Do you like have one of those? I keep seeing people with the stick pole stuff. What do you
I eventually have to buy one of those for some of the work. Because I switch back and forth between taking stills and video so much, I can't have my cameras on anything, and then I shoot with 2 cameras, so I can't have there's just no way I can juggle that. I'm doing enough like cinema style shoots now that it's justifying. Like, I know I have to go buy a drone. I know I have to go buy a steady a gimbal, and so it's like, ugh, I like shooting everything handheld. I like a little shaking my footage. It makes it look like what it was, which is like, oh, I'm getting hit with batons. I think the camera should shake a little bit. I don't know, but
You know,
it's just a combo of the steady whatever control steady shot, I forget what they call it on the Nikons, is pretty good
okay.
for kind of walking for a little bit. I'm also I learned at the feet of Rick Rowley, who's one of the probably the best camera people. He's a director of Dirty Wars, and he has won any number of awards, but he was nominated for he won best cinematography at Sundance. And he's a guy that y'all should follow. He does like all the PBS documentaries about the far right now.
For Frontline, I love Frontline. He does Frontline.
He does a lot of Frontline docs.
I love Frontline.
But this is a guy that like he would go into Baghdad with like a camera and a couple tapes back in the like back when in TV days, and he just cradles it. He never uses tripods. He just like holds it like a little baby, like two hands, and I learned kind of all the different methods of that he does it, and so like I'm usually pretty good for. Obviously it's not going to work for a 45-minute long shoot. My back will be burnt out.
That's what I want to bring up. Like one of the things that outsiders I don't think get, I certainly didn't understand, is how the physical endurance of being a camera person is so much tougher than people would think.
Oh yeah, my shoulders are completely wrecked, and my middle back is just a complete nightmare always. I literally I've actually been joking about I'm very much out of shape lately because I haven't been doing much running around. And I keep joking about doing I should actually come out with like an exercise program for like camera people, because I mean it's not joking. We all talk about like, oh, how do you stretch? Like what? Like one of the old especially now I'm 41, so almost all of my friends who are 10 years younger than me, and that are camera people, and it's just like we talk about how to okay, just so you know, make sure you do a lot of push-ups and making sure you do these stretches, and I give these kids this is what I'm giving them as lessons, because they're out shooting me, and they do much better work than I do, and they know the tech better than I do and everything like that. Like Emily Molly is just amazing. I mean, on the other hand, then we have one of my good friends is Sandy Backham, who is in her 70s, and I met her at the Unite the Right rally covering it. And she covers the far right, and she's been doing some of the most badass work. She was at January 6th as well.
Does she work with the Good Liars?
No, I don't think so. She did a lot of work with Now This. Now she's doing work with Time magazine.
Yeah, I've interacted with her. Yeah, she's really cool.
Yeah, she's great. Yeah. She's a little much on Twitter sometimes, but because she's very much way more #resistance than I am. But she knows her shit, and she is absolutely amazing. I love her.
Thank you so much, Zach. I really appreciate it.